I got loyalty, got royalty inside my DNA. I got love, peace, got war and peace inside my DNA. I got power, poison, pain, and joy inside my DNA.
It was 2 weeks later that the two were informed that their swords were ready and were about to be delivered to them soon. The two wait patiently in the morning for the people to deliver their swords to them, slightly anxious and excited as they waited patiently outside. A few minutes later, two individuals came into view. They both adorn large crafted hats. The left one had a feather above it swaying against the wind on each step. It took like an extended hair strand, while the other has dozens of jingling bells of floral wind chimes on every part of it, jingling at each step he took. They walked majestically slow towards them. The left one has a royal purple long haori with a black yukata tucked inside and gray open pants on, while the one on the right adorns a sunflower-patterned haori, brown yukata, and tucked inside with the long brown cream-colored open pants. They both have a large object strapped behind them as they move toward the two. The large straw hats covered their faces even when they moved toward them. When they do arrive, they stop momentarily a few feet away from the two. Silence greets them for a moment. Tanjiro tries to speak first, but he was immediately cut off by the one on the right. "My name is Hagenzuka," he introduces, "and I am Zaitaku." The one on the left responds in an almost prideful tone. "We have forged Tanjiro Kamado's sword, as well as Hanagaki Takemichi's sword," the man Hagenzuka explains, "and we are here to deliver as requested," the man named Zaitaku adds in. Immediately realizing who they are, Tanjiro and Hanagaki immediately bow in respect to their arrival. Once they did, they both stood straight to reply at the two individuals, or swordsmiths, if one to assume. I'm Kamado Tanjiro, and this is my friend, Hanagaki Takemichi," he introduces alongside Takemichi, who bows slightly in response. "Please come inside." "This is the Nichiren sword," Hagenzuka interrupts, already unfolding the wrapped object behind them, as well as Zaitaku, who begins unwrapping the object as well rather elegantly as Hagenzuka spoke. "And we have forged it," he continues in a solemn voice. Please come in so we can serve you tea." The materials for a Nichiren sword can be obtained from a mountain closest to the sun. Zaitaku and Hagenzuka replies back, interrupting Tanjiro again, and the two spoke at the same time, rather rehearsed and timed perfectly. Did these two plan this beforehand? Hanagaki assumes in his thoughts. Tanjiro only looks at the two rather oddly with a confused and hesitant smile. "Scarlet crimson sand and scarlet crimson ore," Hagenzuka explains, "and lapis cobalt sand and lapis cobalt ore," Zaitaku chimes in as well. "Both produce steel that can absorb sunlight," Hagenzuka pointed at the sun as he explained. Zaitaku had finished unwrapping the blade and is now presenting it in his hand, his face still covered from view. "Wow, is that right?" Tanjiro exclaims in awe at the information. Hanagaki felt rather annoyed slightly now that these two were taking long on this explanation, and it was slowly ticking him off. He doesn't even know how Tanjiro could keep up with this charade of these two individuals. The two continue to explain anything about the Nichiren swords and its forging process rather solemn and proud. The sun was beginning to burn their skins at the heat of the morning being too unbearable each second passing. The two try to have the two individuals come in and get themselves off the dirty floors and come inside, failing rather miserably. "There he goes again," Yurikadaki says exasperatingly. All of a sudden, the two individuals whipped their heads at each two, observing them rather close to their faces. And in full view, the two could see that both individuals wore some sort of clown mask underneath their straw hats. "Hey, you're a child of brightness, aren't you?" Hagenzuka asks rather joyfully, since his tone had changed from a serious and solemn tone to a rather excited and gleeful one. "Now, that's what I call lucky," he exclaims. No, Tanjiro tries to correct him, but was then interrupted again by Zaitaku. "And this one is a bright one, isn't he?" Zaitaku exclaims rather proudly. His eyes are of the brightest blues like sapphire stones or crystalline lapis blue I have ever seen. A child of radiance is this one here? He exclaims rather gleefully. No, I'm the son of Tanjiro and Kai. Tanjiro quickly explains and interrupts, and I'm sure I'm just an only child, so I don't see something to proudful of. Zaitaku-sen Hanagaki replies, waving the other off his face and personal space. That's now what I meant, Haganzuka corrects. He then points at his hair and eyes of Tanjiro to explain. See how your hair and eyes are a reddish color. He points out, when a child like you is born into a family that works with fire, is considered lucky and a cause for celebration. He then digs his finger at Tanjiro's cheeks. A little painful grunt was heard from him as he kept digging on his face. Is that right? I had no idea, Tanjiro replies in mumbling and slurred voice due to the finger. And you, Zaitaku exclaims rather loud and boastful, for someone like you. Those eyes of yours show purity and kindness in those bluish and bright-colored eyes of yours. A child like you born are blessed with hope and luck by the gods themselves. Not many can have such clear and pure blue eyes. Therefore, it's a huge stroke of luck for me to have you as my client. He boasted in a rather prideful manner. Ah, is that so? Was all Hanagaki was able to respond with. There is a good chance this sword will turn red, Haganzuka exclaims. Right, Urokodaki? He asks in a loud voice, enough for Urokodaki to hear from the inside. Yeah. Zaitaku and Haganzuka had finally entered the house, both already handed over the scabbards with the sword within them. Tanjiro held onto his black scabbard sword, while Hanagaki held onto a navy blue scabbard. The handle is navy blue as well, with a gold design on the end. Hurry up and draw them, Zaitaku exclaimed rather enthusiastically, like he was waiting for a huge gift that was about to be given to him if not opened sooner. I want to see my masterpiece change into a beautiful hue, he adds. Haganzuka just makes waving gestures with his arms to urge the two open the swords from their scabbards. Nichiren swords are also known as color-changing swords, Haganzuka explains, whilst still swaying his arms at Tanjiro. Zaitaku just fidgets in his seat, getting giddy and impatient on waiting. They change color depending on the bearer, he ends. It fascinates the two boys at the information. So without a second, Tanjiro and Hanagaki immediately draw their blades out of the scabbard to see the quality and change of the sword. They take out the sword and both raise the blades front high, observing and analyzing the blade of its quality. They wait for more seconds to pass for the exact moment for the blade to change color, and it did. Hanagaki's blade changes in hue of dark blue from the handle transition from dark to a lighter hue of sky blue towards the end. Tanjiro's blade changes entirely to the color black, and the two gasp at the sudden change of their blade in their color. The two then face the other individuals within the house for their reaction to the blade changing color. Black. My, oh my. Zaitaku immediately squeals in glee. As for Haganzuka exhales a rather unbelieved huff at the color that showed. It's black, huh? Urokodaki deadpans on answering. Eh? Is it bad or something if it turns black? Tanjiro asks in worry, somehow worried at what it could mean if it turned black. Hanagaki only looks back at Urokodaki, too, waiting for a reply. In the background, Zaitaku just squeals and jumps in joy at the color of the blade. No, not really, Urokodaki corrects, but nobody has seen a blade this pitch black every so often, he explains. It relieves the two of the information, but as the two face the twitching Haganzuka, he suddenly shrieks in frustration. And here I was, hoping I'd get to see a bright red sword, he exclaims in frustration, to be added with a curse in the end. Well, sucks to be you, Hadaru, Fufu tilde Zaitaku boasts rather arrogantly. Hanagaki disregards the man and was about to calm him down when all of a sudden, he pounces on Tanjiro with a completely weird triangle choke. Tanjiro, Hanagaki calls out. Ouch! Stop! He yelps in pain. Please calm down. How old do you think you are? Tanjiro asks in his position of being tangled in pain at Haganzuka's hold. I'm 37, he exclaims. He's 37, and he's acting this childish, Hanagaki exclaims in his head, who proceeds to try and get the man off of Tanjiro to let him free. Out of nowhere, 2 squawking bird sounds were heard outside, and in a single moment, 2 crows landed inside the house's floorings. One had its feathers covering one eye, and the other was normal-looking. Kamado Tanjiro. H. Hanagaki Takemichi. One spoke in a very loud voice, and the other spoke in a soft and almost shy tone. Here are your orders, the 2 crows exclaim at the same time. It talks, the 2 screamed in surprise inside their heads. Make your way to the northwest. Young girls have been vanishing there. The loud one reports to him loudly and dramatically. Hanagaki then looks at the other crow, who was cowering slightly but remains in its position. Make your way northeast from here. Fear of young sea children disappearing left and right H have been reported. Solve immediately. It stutters in reporting as it tries to convey its message as proud and loud as it can like the other crow. Tanjiro and Hanagaki share a glance, and in their eyes they nod at the same time, determined for their first mission yet. Hunt down the demon lurking there and kill it. The 2 crows exclaim all together as the 2 boys grip their blades tightly. The 2 immediately get dressed in their uniforms. Tanjiro wore a green and black checkered haori, much like his checkered jacket, while Hanagaki wore his black fade to blue haori with gold pattern outlines of clouds on them. The symbol of Toman on his left chest was embroidered by himself when he acquired the gift that Urokodaki gave them for completing their training. Have the 2 of you changed? Urokodaki asks, to which then 2 boys face him in full view of their new attire. He hums in approval at the sight of the 2. In the other room, Nezuko shifts under the futon to observe her brother and his friend in their new attire. The 3 then sat together for a simple small talk before the 2 depart for their first mission. Now that the 2 of you are starting off with the Demon Slayer Corps now, there are a few things I need to explain to the 2 of you first, he explains in a solemn voice. The 2 nodded in unison as they listened closely. That Demon Slayer Corps outfit you're wearing right now, it's made of a special kind of fiber. It's quite breathable, and it repels moisture and won't burn easily like any normal fabric or material used in clothing, he explains. Hanagaki raises his arm to observe closely on the uniform as Urokodaki explains. Low-level demons' talons or fangs couldn't even manage to tear that uniform, he explains further. Tanjiro tugs the uniform at the impressive material of the uniform. And that blade of yours, Tanjiro, he adds in. The 2 face back at Urokodaki for a moment, since not many see a blade turn into a pure pitch black color. There is so little known about them. He tries to ease the explanation, so little in fact, that black blades are said to be wielded by swordsmen who'll never go far, he ends. Hanagaki worries at the fact, so he immediately tombs Tanjiro's hand and tries to see if there will be any casualties on his friend at his first mission, to which he found no flash of a vision of any sort. Tanjiro was caught by surprise at this, and so did Urokodaki, but they knew what he was doing, so Tanjiro only smiled softly at the worry of his friend and rubs his shoulder, trying to ease his worry. I don't know how I'll do in the Demon Slayer Corps, he admits as he takes his hand off Hanagaki's shoulder, but I'm gonna turn Nezuko back into a human no matter what, as he looks back at Nezuko, who was still hiding under the futon and smiled at her. Yes, you're right, Urokodaki confirms. I have faith you're gonna make it happen, Tanjiro Urokodaki admits to him proudly in a soft tone. Hanagaki only nods in response as well, determined that Tanjiro will make that cure happen one day. And even better, he promises him that he'll also try and find a way to cure his sister, too, in any ways he can. One more thing, Urokodaki adds. He shifts his position to take out a box hidden in the corner and presented it to Tanjiro. Take this. He pushes the box towards him. This box is for your sister, so you could carry her during the day, he explains. The two form an O expression at the well-crafted box Urokodaki made for Tanjiro and his sister. It had a well-painted job of a reddish-orange hue, two white straps on the other end for the carry, and small metal holding to keep the box intact. This is very well done, Urokodaki-san, Takemichi praises him, as Tanjiro takes the box and lifts it with his two hands. It's so light, it's really light, Urokodaki-san, Tanjiro exclaims in joy as he stood up, impressed at the lightness of the box, despite the heaviness of the way it looks. Takemichi stands up, too, and tries to hold the box as well, impressed too at the craftsmanship before handing it back to Tanjiro. He immediately goes to Nezuko, who was hiding under the futon, watching her brother as he neared her to kneel in front of her and presented the box in front of her. Nezuko, can you get inside of this? He asks her, who only stares for a few minutes before shuffling inside the box. In her movements, it was noticeable that she had changed her attire. She was now wearing a long, leaf-patterned kimono and a long brown coat as she enters the box. Nezuko, from now on, we're always going to be together, okay? He assures her sister, who was now inside the box. Hanagaki and Urokodaki stare at this lovely moment of two siblings. It was heartwarmingly wholesome to watch. Tanjiro is such a good elder brother. All right, we'll be going now, Tanjiro bids goodbye to Urokodaki, who waits patiently at him as they stood in front of him. Hold on, do you mind? He asks as he steps forward and began adjusting the few creases in their uniforms. He stares at the two for a few seconds, somehow feeling gloomy to see the two go, but he knows he can't keep them with him forever. So he pats their shoulders in comfort for their journey ahead. It took a few minutes of momentarily staying before the two had begun to depart for their first mission. The two waved goodbye one more time towards Urokodaki, as he began to shrink in size with each step the two took as they trekked down the mountain. The two walked down the path together before they have to part ways soon. And while they did, they spoke for a few minutes before they depart. It's a shame we couldn't do a mission together. I would love to join you in our first missions, Hanagaki admits solemnly. Tanjiro only chuckles in response as well. Yes, it is a shame. But I'm sure we'll meet each other somewhere down the road, Tanjiro says positively towards Hanagaki. The two remain walking together before they reach a certain stop where the two will have to separate. Well, I'll see you when I see you then, Hanagaki asks, as the two stop at the small train station. Tanjiro nods at the statement and turns, Yeah, see you then, Takemichi. Good luck on your first mission. He bids him farewell as he began to sprint west. As to you too, he calls out, waving goodbye, and there, he begins to sprint to the east, where his first mission lies. It was beginning to come around the afternoon when Hanagaki arrived, where he was led by his crow, whose name was Kenjono Okubio. He has a timid personality, but he seems to try and be as useful as he can despite his shy personality. Currently, he's at the top of a certain building. He doesn't know what it has in store, but it would seem to be a commercial building in Kanagawa Prefecture, a coastal prefecture just south of Tokyo. It would seem in the certain part of this city, children have been disappearing bit by bit every night. Due to that, lots of children stay at home now when it hits the 6 p.m. mark, information he acquired asking the residents, nearby schools and such. It turns out it targets children between the age of 5 to 13 years old, mostly young girls. Hanagaki proceeds to parker every building to get a hawk-eye view of the city clearly. He knows he won't get anything done in the bright sunny rays, as demons only appear at night. So with that, he continues to gather information instead from the most recent kidnappings and disappearances, to which he also learned that he targets the 6 districts of the city altogether: Eiko, Ashigarakami, Ashigarashimo, Koza, Miura, and Naka districts. He can only conclude 2 things. 1. The demon has some sort of blood demon art that lets him travel faraway places so easily if it can cover almost 6 districts. 2. There is at least more than one demon in this district. But that's sort of a guess because if there were multiple demons, they wouldn't have sent just him to take care of it. So that's a small theory for now. One of the few things he also learned is that, despite the fact the parents or teachers forbidding children to leave their homes past 6 at night without an adult, they somehow manage to kidnap the children in the night, whether they'd be outside or inside the safety of their homes. So it's a natural conclusion now that this demon might possess some blood demon art at his disposal to do such heinous crimes so easily without a single trace. He pities the children who have been taken. It was slowly getting dark now, and he hasn't eaten any lunch yet, so before he could go and continue his patrol towards the night, he enters a small ramen shop within the Koza district. "Welcome. Have a seat, boy." The bar master, who seems to be busy cooking, welcomes him while his attention was focused on cooking. The smell of different broth of ramen grumbled in his stomach. He realized he was this hungry already. He takes a seat at the front bar. Only a few adults were seated, drinking beer and such with a joyous smile. He smiles at whatever celebration they are doing to be that happy, and when they saw him staring, they only grin in response and cheer to him. Maybe a little drunk to realize he was not a proper adult yet, so he just smiles back, nearly blinding the drunk man, who's a little half sober and half drunk. "So, what can I get you?" The bar master's voice stops in his throat at the sight of Hanagaki. Confused, Hanagaki calls out to the man. "Hello, sir, are you all right?" he asks as he waves his hand and snaps his fingers at his face to get his attention back. He regains his focus again and fake coughs to cover his rudeness of staring too much. "Why, yes, I'm fine." "So," he exclaims loudly, "what can I get ya, dear boy?" he asks him, with the man's signature bright grin, hand on his waist. Hanagaki just simply orders a tonkatsu ramen with salmon sashimi, to which the bar master complies and begins prepping the new order. Hanagaki looks around the shop to see the customers, drinking, eating, and laughing the night away so easily. It warms him to see this kind of sight. "So, where'd you come from, boy? From what you look like, you're not from here, are you?" the bar master asks, who hands him his salmon sashimi with wasabi and soy sauce sides. Hanagaki gratefully takes it and took the first bite. "Yes, I am. I just arrived here today, so I'm just currently eating out for now," he explains. He ate another piece and tries to avoid any sort of question the man might ask, like his clothes, the sword behind him, wearing of a haori that's so traditional and so forth. Is that so?" The man questionably prolongs the answer, which confuses Hanagaki for a few seconds. But when the man comes closer to him in an earshot, the next words shock him the most. "So, are you here to solve the disappearances of young children here, little demon slayer?" he teases in a whisper tone. Hanagaki chokes slightly at the salmon before facing the bar master more clearly, shocked at this. "Why, you know what I am?" he immediately asks once he had drank a cup of water after nearly choking on salmon. "Yep, sure do," the man admits as he begins chopping some toppings for his tonkatsu ramen. "How? Did you perhaps have met a demon slayer before already, bar master?" Hanagaki inquires the man, to which he only grins in response while still focusing on the food. "Sure did. I was a wee lad in the countryside when my family got attacked by demons, but just before it could eat my entire family, a demon slayer arrived." He pauses as he stops to look at the boy in front of him. He was a rather large man. He wore a large green haori on his shoulders. He also has praying beads on his hands and neck, and the weapon he uses was rather bizarre. He reminisces at the memory. "If I remember correctly, he uses a rather large spike ball that is chained at the end of it is an axe." He ponders while touching his chin. "He was incredible at the job, that it never left my mind. My family felt ever so grateful that night. They invited him to eat at least one of their dishes as a token of appreciation." He finishes as he places the remaining toppings on the ramen for a finish. "Since then, whenever my family would see a demon slayer enter one of our ramen shops, they'd invite them for a meal." He hands the ramen to Hanagaki, which he took delightfully, and have them eat it for free, he admits. Hanagaki snaps his head towards the bar master, unbelievingly, that the man chuckles at the reaction. As if reading his question, the man answered for him. "Don't worry, boy. This is our way of saying thank you for your hard work, and of course," he leans on the counter to further reach him in a whisper, "once you do come back here again, I will have to charge you for it. So do go ahead and eat with no hesitation," he says quietly. Hanagaki only smiles back at this and proceeds to eat the ramen set for him. The Demon Slayer Corps must have been a very good organization to reach the hearts of many people like this, he thought sentimentally to himself. Hanagaki was currently chasing a demon in the middle of the night, where all the residents have begun sleeping by now. But not for him nor this demon he's chasing. "Arg, leave me be, pesky human. You have no idea what sort of waste you are doing by not letting me get these pathetic children," the demon exclaims in annoyance as it hurls a puff of smoke towards him, which he quickly evades. He found out while searching for this demon that he uses these powders to lure children out of their homes with its scent and trances them into a sleepwalking state and captures them in a different colored smoke, a black one that captures them and brings them to a certain other dimensional pocket where he devours them. The puff of smoke he hurled towards him was now purple, but due to his senses, he knows it has a different set of properties or effects on them, to which he was right once he jumped and avoided it. Its smoke melted a piece of ground where the smoke dissipates at. An acidic and poisonous smoke, he concludes. As he soars for a few seconds in the air, he readies a stance. Karui no Kakyu. Ikai no Kata. Blinding strike. A slash of bright light blinded the demon for a second, and before he could adjust, the slash had hit his neck and decapitated him before he could turn itself into a small piece of smoke and fleas. "No, no, no, no," the demon complains as the head and body begin to slowly disintegrate and dust away. "This is not fair. That stupid technique of yours blinded me. No fair, no fair, no fair." It screams in complaint as it began to fade away. "Life isn't always fair, demon," he thought to himself as he watches the head begin to disintegrate. When it did, he put his hands together in prayer and bids the demon farewell and a wish for it to be reborn as a human once again, and be forgiven soon one day. But he has no time to waste. When the demon had finally disappeared, 5 children appeared out of thin air, where the demon's head had just vanished. He immediately checks their condition, to which, in luck, were still alive and well, and probably knocked out. He immediately takes the children and leaned them against the wall. He called for the bar master of the ramen shop he visited and asked him to look after the children, too, to which he complies completely. He also takes out a small piece of cloth bag, inside were the items of the missing children recently, such as stuffed toys, small blankets, pacifiers, pieces of fabric from their clothes, and so on, and hands it over to him. So the parents of the dead children were to be aware of their child's condition, despite it being cruel when the parents found out that their children are gone. It was all for the best for now. The bar master was also sent for questioning, but he was immediately taken out and found not guilty since he wasn't even found in CCTV footage of kidnapping children. And he did admit someone called him there to watch over the kidnapped children, but he didn't disclose who it was. And with that, Hanagaki finished his first mission, and unto the next he goes. While Hanagaki is busy slaying demons left and right, completing his missions one after the others were busy with their lives. Some try to live it the best they can, some work hard to fulfill a promise, a will, and dream of a certain blue-eyed hero, and some were very much getting antsy at the loss of certain precious someone. The bell had just rung. The students have begun walking and clearing out of their schools, ready to head home or head elsewhere with their friends and have fun, or others just have some business none knows about. Hina was getting her stuff ready, cleaning up her desk of everything she had put out. They had a test today, and it was quite brutal and taxing for her and her friends. Luckily enough, it was finally over. She and her friends can now rest easy after such a long day of hard work and the payment of crammings, late-night study sessions with her friends just for the exams, they decided to take a break at home for the day. She exits her homeroom, her bag slung over her shoulders, and she proceeds to clear out and head to the entrance, where everyone is supposed to be. She arrives just in time, outside the entrance, where the Mizo-mid boys, as what he likes to call his friends and him, were all patiently waiting outside for her. Atsushi seems to be immersing himself on his phone. Yamagishi and Makoto, the idiotic duo, they seem to be sharing something hilarious again, while Takuya is just watching the sunset from afar. "Hey, I'm here," she calls their attention. They all whip their heads at the source of the sound to see Hina waving back at them. So, in return, they reciprocate. Takuya, being near the entrance, embraces her hug, and Atsushi approaches her for a well-proper greet. "Is everyone here?" she asks, looking around the group for anyone missing the group, and to her surprise, he's not her. "We're still missing Kisaki," Yamagishi tells her, putting away the phone he and Makoto were laughing together at. "He's probably busy with his homeroom teacher," Makoto adds. "He faces his attention to Hina, being class representative, and all must be quite taxing after all," he chimes in his opinion. "Oh, is that so?" Hina intervenes. She removes herself from the hug she was still in with Takuya. "Guess we'll just have to wait for him then," Hina adds in. But not a moment later, a familiar cheeky voice emanates from behind them. "You don't have to worry yourself about that. I'm here." Their attention faces back towards the entrance, where lo and behold, Kisaki exits out. He seems to be carrying another bag that wasn't there with him at first, and by the sound of it rustling and looking heavy, it could be paperwork. Judging from their inquisitive looks, they were curious as to why he was late in the arrival at the exact meeting time. He sighs in response first. "The homeroom teacher wanted me to take home this paperwork and help her in arranging them and checking them. And yes, it's the test papers of classmates," he answers their curiosity. They all just nod in affirmation before proceeding to head out. They chat their way there. Some were about their grueling tests, some were about the plans they have for this weekend. Yes, it was already Friday for them, and some were about the most common shared questions in their minds. A good 30 minutes later, they arrive at Hanagaki's house. It was very much left abandoned, but they didn't want it to be left to waste, so they come here at least once or twice a week, clearing it out of its dust, and any rodents that may lurk. Well, it wasn't only that. They also enter his home, courtesy of Takuya, having a spare key given to him by Hanagaki, just to make the house feel livelier. It was also their way of getting comfort from the lack of his presence. Despite him not being there with them, the house felt warm and comforting, even after they left it. It gave them a sort of feeling of security, a sense that he was still around. And they stay there, just in case he comes back, and they'll be the ones to greet him back home. "Man, I'm so out of it," Makoto whines as he abruptly slouches on the living room couch, his bag now thrown about near him as it slides off his shoulders and onto the floors. "You said it. What they say about high school being the toughest years every teenager will face was truly a terrifying fact." Yamagishi agrees with Makoto as he sits on the same couch, but more proper than Makoto is. Hina decided to sit on the floor near the coffee table and took out her other work that needs finishing. And so did Kisaki, who places the bag on top of it. She winces at the amount he was about to go through, and it looks tiring to handle too. "Me and Atsushi will be here in the kitchen to cook food," Takuya calls out as he takes an apron from the side to wear, while Atsushi has begun taking out ingredients to cook with. It would usually be Hanagaki cooking whenever they drop by his place, and by the heavens, were his cooking something to die for. "Thanks, you too," she replies back loudly. She focuses her attention back on her work. Yamagishi then proceeds to turn on the TV, while Makoto, well, being him, proceeds to do his type of killing time. Hina continues on finishing her work and kills time with it. Of course, everyone had already messaged their guardians about where they'll be staying for a while, and they respectively accepted that after what they learned from them about their feelings and their state at the moment after the disappearance of their precious friend. After a good hour Hina was finally finished. She stretches at the soreness of her body, being still for a good while. And Takuya and Atsushi also placed a few snacks and drinks for the hard-working duo on the coffee table. Once she was done, she noticed how Kisaki was still not done with his work. Only half was scratched from the workload. Must be tough for him. She pities her friend in her own thoughts. Seeing him so concentrated and focused, she realized he doesn't seem to be focusing much on getting his energy replenished just to finish certain work. Reminds her of a certain someone. "Hey Kisaki-kun," she calls out to him. He momentarily stops at what he was doing and faces Hina for a second as she sits back down next to him. "Yes, is there something you need?" he asks, holding a few papers in hand and a pen too. He seems to be checking some of the tests, while the others were the proposals of his classmates from their clubs or their reports and such from his student council members. Yes, he's part of that too as the secretary of the council. "If you don't mind, can I hilo you with the rest of those? You'll finish them faster if you'd let me," she offers, as she waits for his reply. He only stares for a few minutes before smiling softly and nods, thanking her afterward for the offer, as he also proceeds to instruct her on what to do. They busy themselves with the amount of paperwork that the noise in the background deafens their ears. Makoto and Yamagishi are ordered by a mother mode Takuya to do something productive like cleaning, while he and Atsushi finish cooking. The noise deafens in their ears, reserved for the two. Hina was also getting antsy about waiting. She's been waiting for Kisaki to finish his work, but with her offering to help, she brings up her question again. "Hey Kisaki-kun," she calls his attention again, looking up at him. He hums in approval of her calling while still looking at the papers. "What is it, Hina?" he replies. She takes a deep breath and lets it out slowly as to relieve the tension. "Any news yet?" she drops a bomb. Kisaki halts at what he was doing at the question. He knows what she meant, and he wasn't sure how to answer it. He only sighs and places the papers down to look at her more properly, adjusting his glasses that had gotten crooked for not paying attention. "Not yet," he replies dull and straightforward. "Hanma is coming here soon, so he'll have some insights of his whereabouts soon," he replies solemnly. And just on cue, the door suddenly opens in a large bang, not strong enough to destroy it, but loud enough that it sounded like the person was frustrated. And come from the hallways appears Hanma, wearing the same uniform the Rokuhara Tandai sport on, only more sophisticated than it previously was. "Man, I am beat tilde," he sing-songs as she drops himself at the singular couch near Kisaki. The Mizo mid-boys nearly having a heart attack at the sudden burst, being with those goofers. See seriously annoying Teta-chan tilde. He whines at Kisaki. "Won't you come back anymore though?" He continues on nudging the back of Kisaki's head. "I'm not going back, and you know this, Hanma," he responds, annoyed and so done with Hanma's antics. "Also, stop bursting in Hanagaki's house like that. Sooner or later you're gonna break his door, despite you holding back on your strength to open it like that, you corpse." He reprimands him, not looking back at him while he did. Hanma pouts in response to the reprimand, further slouching himself on the singular couch. Takuya had just finished cooking when he called out. Atsushi was now setting the table in the background, while a side comment was heard from Yamagishi about starving already. Hanma, cut to the chase. He spoke in a cold tone. "Any news yet?" he asks, his head turning slightly at Hanma. He tenses at the attention, as well as feeling several gazes from the occupants in the room, looking expectant at the zombie individual. He sighs in response. "Always on to the point as always, huh? Teta-chan," he sighs in exasperation. He adjusts himself properly on the chair and leans forward, hunched back. Unfortunately, there hasn't been any news of him as of late. It's like his entire existence disappeared into thin air, he told the occupants in the room, monotone and serious, devoid of any joking mannerism he always portrays. Their expression deepened and sour at the news. They expected it, but they also expected at least some slight information. But then again, Hanagaki did want space, so they'll have to respect that. But it's been 2 years. Not a single piece of information just makes it odd and worrying. They know better that Hanagaki wouldn't dare to die out there without letting them know. At least, Hina knows he won't, as he always kept tight of his promises very well, especially when it came to Hina. "Is that so?" was all Kisaki replied. The room had gotten darker and colder. Despite the warmth of the food, its enticing smell, and the warmth the house still provides, it felt cold and uncomfortable for everyone. Hanma, being him, abhors boredom and a tense atmosphere, so he quickly tried to change the topic, one that should spike some sort of amusing reaction, but at the same time, something less tense than the atmosphere at the current moment. His eyes dilate of an idea. Even though most of them wouldn't like it, it's better than nothing. Though, it could get him strangled either by Kisaki or the Hina chick. Not to dampen the mood even further, how about a change of topic, he suggested. Everyone turned attention back to him, expectant and curious at the suggestion. Taking the curious gazes of the people in the room, he took the cue to continue. "How about news about the current situation in the gang community, HM?" He sing-songs with a childish expression. Everyone, I mean literally everyone, sours at the irritating cheerful expression of the said male, suggesting a topic they all prefer not to hear about. Somehow sensing their reaction, he immediately answers back before anyone declines. "I know you don't want to even hear a single peep of the gangs going around anymore, but hear me out." He waves his hands quickly to try and erase any malice comments about the suggested change of topic. "I know you all have some issues with the gangs going around, but isn't it best you at least hear the bigger picture of what they are doing right now instead of ignoring it? Who knows, maybe they already have a lead on the things you're all looking for better than I do." He vocalizes a fact. He did point out a painstaking fact. As much as they don't want to hear anything regarding him or any gangs, they should at least hear some of it. They'll hear about them sooner or later anyway, and it's best they know at least a bit of it. "All right then, what do you have for us then, Hanma?" Atsushi spoke for the others. Everyone paid close attention to everything Hanma has to offer of the gang community they have been ignoring. Even the occasional delinquent Wikipedia Yamajishi paid close attention, as he has been avoiding that topic after what they learned about Hanagaki. Hanma started off with the worst news, Mikey's gang, the Kanto Manji gang. He started off with all the things he's done to create his gang the most ruthless and the most powerful gang out there, going around making deals with crime families, doing criminal activities such as theft, terrorism, and so much more, that it keeps getting worse each second they continue to grow and expand, that it's only a matter of time they take over the whole entirety of the underworld of Japan itself. But currently, as of now, they've been doing things rather different compared to the former Tamen. Instead of fighting righteously, they're fighting unfairly and dirty, with weapons and such. They also now began doing illegal weapons dealing, that they are currently the top one out of all the current and new gangs being formed out there. It disgusts the others in the room at the news. Next was the gang Hanma was in, Rokuhara Tandai. It was originally shut down by Mikey after the leader, South, was taken down by Mikey, and, as much as they hate to admit it, was taken out with his terrifying swift kicks. They didn't know why he suddenly got revived, but all they can assume is that he wanted a bit of payback against Mikey. Losing to him must have got a huge blow to his pride, so it wasn't going to be surprised if that was the case. But it wasn't. To Hanma's intel, there was a rumor as to why he suddenly revived Rokuhara Tandai. Hanma kept quiet, saying he'll explain the rumor later after he finishes. He also continues that the fact Rokuhara Tandai has begun functioning rather differently compared to before. South had also begun acting rather off. He used to be a brute force, charismatic, and more terrifying, but now he began leading Rokuhara much more dignified, yet terrifying in such manner that it landed them as the second best gang out there. Of course, they also deal with criminal activities now too, but they specialize in brute forces now as well, like other stuff, but that's beside the point. Hanma only realized this when he lost to South at a mock battle. He was more charismatically odd at recruiting him, more admirable even. Instead of beating them to submission like he used to, he makes the others he's recruiting admit defeat to him and just lets it be, instead of going ham on beating Hanma to death in submission too. Odd was all the others thought about it. Yamagishi and Kisaki thought deeply at this as they listened for more. The last one was Senju's gang, Brahman. She kept her vows well. Despite dealing with the most blow on her gang, she's been steadily getting her force back up again, thanks to the experiences the first-gen Black Dragon and the former Tommen executives help. She's been leading her gang much closer to the morals Tommen and Black Dragons uphold better than anyone. Yes, she also does criminal activities now too, but they prefer not to involve too many innocent citizens in their activities. Therefore, their acts and deeds caused a lot of nearby gangsters and delinquents to join them, finding them much more admirable and tame than of the other top two, resulting them to be the top 3 of the best gangs out there. There were also conspicuous observations about them, like how they were suspicious as to why a gang such as Brahman revived despite being shut down by Kantu-Manji gang before. But a rumor did uprise within the inner circles of Brahman. Something about upholding the will of a certain person's wishes to defeat the Kantu-Manji gang, and to honor that person's deeds. The others have a small glimmer of relief and joy at that. They may not interact much with the gang activities, but Senju's gang was the only one they found admirable compared to the others. Despite their hands now being stained in blood and sin, they still find them good. Even Hina agrees wholeheartedly at this, grateful the former Tommen executives and Senju are doing just fine. Yeah, things have been hectic lately. The 3 deities' defeat and revival was a shock to many, but it just keeps boosting other nearby gangs being created or currently existing to take them down. At least Hanma compliments with a sly grin, looking rather proud, but they just sigh in exasperation at this. But that's the only thing worrying about the current happenings within the gang community. Hanma's tone sounded rather too serious. It sent everyone a sense of intense worry. What do you mean? Kisaki asks from beside Hanma, miraculously having finished his paperwork while listening, turning to look at Hanma curiously. There's been a strange rumor going around the gang community. It's still small, but the content of it is concerning. He adds in something about how the 3 deities share the same interesting goals in mind. His eyes darken at the information, clearly meaning it wasn't any good sign. Sharing the same goals? What goals? Takuya asks, who somehow has finished eating along with the others. It says that the rumors were about the 3 deities looking for a certain interesting individual, desperately. He emphasizes the last part, how the Kantu-Manji gang is looking for a certain blue-eyed boy with raven hair, the Rokuhara Tandai, looking for a certain hero the leader is dying to pay respects to and honor at, and Brahman looking for someone called the crybaby hero. As of late, he continues. The feeling of dread and worry increases. Somehow, the information is getting rather unsettling and making them extremely restless. Due to this, a lot of gangs are now looking for this certain individual. They at first thought it was a separate being, but when someone got too close to the information, they found out the person the 3 deities were looking for was the same person, that it sparked a kindling interest that is not pleasant, and are now searching for this certain blue-eyed, raven-haired, crybaby hero they all respect and are dying to look for. The dread sunk, and they realize the gravity of the situation. Hanagaki Takemichi is now being pursued by various gangs and individuals with the goal of doing something God knows what to him just because they found out the 3 deities are interested in searching for him. What are we gonna do if this keeps up? Hanagaki won't just come back with a peaceful mind, but he'll be returning to a shit show of a ruckus, complained Makoto, who looks rather irritated and annoyed, the same expression boring the faces of the others. It was a matter they cannot ignore anymore, and now they were thankful they heard this from Hanma. They began formulating ways they could lessen this rumor, until Kisaki spoke up. Nothing, he deadpans, we do nothing. What do you mean we do nothing? Atsushi yells back aloud at the audacious answer. We do nothing. For now, he adds in, think about it. They only heard of this rumor at a minimum. but it hasn't grown too large that it will cause a huge uproar. And even if they find out about Hanagaki, they won't be able to find him now, will they? He points out a fact. Everyone's eyes glimmer at the fact. It is true, even if they do find anything about Hanagaki, they won't be able to find him at all. They'd search for him for almost 2 years now. It'd be a miracle that they'd find him before they did. And if none of them, even the other 3, couldn't find him, how could they? Until none of them finds him before we do, we'll leave it at that. And we'll leave it that for good. We'll find clues about his whereabouts first. While we do, we'll cover our tracks, try to make sure they don't find what we find. He stands up and leaves to the restroom. Everyone agrees wholeheartedly and begins cleaning up the eaten plates, feeling relieved that they won't find him. At least, they'll have to contribute to hiding him whilst finding him on their own. Hina, on the other hand, looks out the window, the sky shimmering with familiar bright lights, like the same shine a certain blue-eyed hairboy she knows and loves, twinkling in the night sky. She sighs at the thought and leans on the window affectionately, thinking about him and worrying about him. She sighs. "Where are you, Takemichi-kun?" she silently asks in her own thoughts, praying to whatever deity out there to protect him from harm or death, and hopefully doesn't come home to such a mess within where she is as of now. He should have expected this. Of course, when he knew of the demon slayer occupation from Urakadaki-san, as well as the stories he told him of his journey, adding the final selection exam, he knew he was in for some tiring and straining journey of a lifetime. Right now, he's currently just taking a break by eating at some local food stall in Hokkaido. Yes, this place is very expensive from the viewpoint of the others, but thanks to the number of earnings he gets for working at the Demon Slayer Corps, he doesn't have to worry about paying all that much. Did you know that Demon Slayers can get paid really well? As of this moment, he's currently ranked Mizuno, which was a good step up if he has to look at a different standpoint. He gets paid fairly, has a decent job, a goal set in mind, and doesn't care much about anything at all anymore. Sure, he did promise he'll return one day, but that's a problem future him will have to deal with when the time comes. Of course, while he eats, he also writes his letters to Tanjiro. Being pen pals, they share the stories of their journey together as well. As far as he had gathered from his side, Tanjiro has been steadily ranking up as well. His crow, Matsuman Tenauji, has been extremely adamant about him doing missions, not even letting him rest like his crow does. Although, his crow, Kenjono Okabio, despite being so timid and emotional crow, doesn't let him rest either. Only with small breathers or snacks when he's hungry. Gosh, he pities him Tanjiro for the amount of workload he's been subjected to. Another part of his letter that he narrated to him was that apparently his sister, Nezuko, had also been assisting him in slaying demons. The shock was so surprising to Takemichi when he read the letter. Apparently, due to her prolonged sleep, she gained an incredible amount of strength that it was terrifying to even describe. And the first time she assisted was when he was fighting a demon who has a blood demon art that allows it to open portals similar of a swamp. She helped him protect the civilians that were near them while he went and dealt with the other demons, which he explained the demon was capable of creating 3 clones of itself. When he had defeated the 2 clones, he had asked about the swamp demon, about the demon progenitor, Kibutsuji Musen, and anything he could get information of. Oddly enough, the demon began trembling at his question, which Hanagaki also found odd when he read the story. Something about the swamp demon saying he can't tell him anything, while trembling before him, or something else entirely. Hanagaki could only conclude that the demon was afraid of the Demon King himself. He can understand why he was afraid, but why to the point he refused to even just utter his name or even speak a piece of small information about him at all. Hanagaki can continue his questions for another time, as Okabio landed down on him on his arm, bearing his next mission. He has no doubts he'll do well at this one. Well, he shouldn't have been too arrogant in the last mission. The demon was much more abrasive and arbitrary, a demon who throws everything it has toward its opponent. It was rather perceptive. The only thing he found commendable was being able to perceive his next moves was so tricky that he shouldn't have been so arrogant on defeating. Now here he was, being led by his crow somewhere to rest and heal his injuries, bearing several cuts and maybe a few broken bones and ribs due to the never-stopping mission he takes left and right without proper rest to heal his injuries. Again, working as a demon slayer is hell. Caw, rest, sleep, rest and heal. Okubio caws slightly loud and hesitant, trying his best not to impair his hearings and agitate his slayer's mood with his loud announcements. Thanks, Okubio. You can rest on my shoulder for now, Hanagaki offers, immediately placing Okubio on an available and not broken shoulder. Okubio nestles on his right shoulder, gently as possible so as to not heighten the other shoulder pain. The two were at the gate of an inn. It had a wisteria crest engraved on the wooden gate, surrounded by trees upon trees of wisteria flowers. From what he gathered from Yurikodaki before he left, inns, shops, or restaurants with this crest would indicate they work alongside the Demon Slayer Corps, meaning they are aware of the existence of demons and are ready to assist demon slayers who come passing by their establishment, free of charge. Apparently, the inns and other establishments with these crests engraved on their business owe the Demon Slayer Corps a huge debt of gratitude for saving its family, the very reason they don't charge demon slayers of service, and in exchange, according to the leader of the Demon Slayer Corps, they provide security and safety from demons in exchange for such hospitality. When Hanagaki reaches the front gate, a woman wearing a traditional purple kimono and white waist apron appears in front of him. She was bearing a kind and unbothered smile at him, indicating she knew he was coming. "Welcome to High Rise Inn. It would seem you are a demon slayer," she points out, opening the gate wider for him to enter as she gestures a hand towards the inn. "Come in and rest." Hanagaki obliges on following as the girl, who seems to be 2 years younger than him, leads him inside. Upon arriving, the girl immediately takes off her sandals and towards the reception area to get Hanagaki settled. He wasn't the only one in this inn, it would seem. He could see some customers like tourists passing by from time to time. He even saw a fellow demon slayer, if the crow on its shoulder were anything to go by. "Excuse me, sir," someone calls out to him. He shifts his attention back towards the caller, to see the girl from before trying to gather his attention. "Your room is on the 3rd floor, room 131. Change of clothes, food, and a doctor will be brought into your room shortly," she explains softly, handing him a small key for the room. "Thank you," as Hanagaki proceeds to rise the flight of stairs towards his room. And just like what the lady said, they provided him a simple lavender-colored yukata with line patterns. And when he had settled himself in and his crow, teishoku was served and left at his front door, to which he obliged on eating. Not long after he had eaten, a knock was heard again, and an attendant came in to take the teishoku and left, leaving him with a doctor to check up on him. "Broken ribs and a dislocated left shoulder, severe," the doctor prescribed. Hanagaki left his room shortly after his checkup to go to the inn's own hot spring, with a towel ready and a bucket filled with cleaning usages like a scrub, soap, and shampoo. Giddy about finally being able to take a warm, relaxing bath after long time slaying demons. He was about to arrive at the showers where he'll have to clean himself up before dipping, when all of a sudden, a loud and annoyed voice was heard. "Ha! What did you say, you piece of shit?" Hanagaki flinched on his spot at the austere and snarky voice. He looms slightly around the corner to come and take a peek at the noise, only to find 2 customers. One was a male, holding on to a teenager's yukata rather harshly. "You heard me, you ungrateful brat. Apologize to my wife this instant." The man accused the boy with an irritated tone. The woman beside him was just cowering behind him, holding onto the man's sleeve tightly with a pouty and accused expression, which seems rather fake if you ask Hanagaki. "Ha! Why should I? I don't even know this bitch, not until now, you bastard." The teenage boy with a scar on his cheek, bearing a scornful and pissed expression with his slick-back long black hair in a crew cut, bares his fangs at the older man. "You disgraceful brat, how dare you to call her a bitch after what you just did to my wife?" The man retaliated again with full-blown anger. "Listen, old man, I never met your precious wife until now, so what the hell do you think I did to her anyway? You dare feign ignorance? You groped my wife, you piece of shit." "Ha! Why the fuck would I do that? Did you hit your useless head somewhere? Because why would I grope a woman? What made you even think I would when you clearly don't have any fucking solid evidence? Don't deny it. Your entire appearance is enough proof that someone as unsightly as you, a barbaric child filled with scars, would try something like groping another man's wife. What the fuck? Not only are you accusing me falsely, but you're also scrutinizing harshly my own appearance. Talk about you racist, you fucking son of a bitch." The boy was about to land a blow on the older man, when all of a sudden, the punch was stopped by a tight grip, while the other man was softly pushed back. "What the boy with a crew cut thought to himself. Would you please cut it out?" A boy with raven hair and the bluest eyes he has ever seen stepped in and stopped the fight. He was so enamored by the boy's eyes that he failed to see the boy was focusing his attention on him. "You," he points out, "you can't just cause a ruckus and start hitting people out of nowhere," he reprimands him, and slowly he gets closer to him and spoke in a hushed voice, "Know your role, Slayer. If this man is talking you down like this, endure it. We don't need to be agitated for something so trivial," he scolds him softly. He couldn't refute what he said due to him being still mesmerized by his eyes, and only scoffs and looks away. "And you," the boy points out at the older guy, "I know this very much likely not my business, but you both need to know better that you two are in an inn right now. People could very well be sleeping by now, but here you are, causing a ruckus in this quiet inn." He reprimands loudly, but not too loud, "And from what I heard, mister, what the boy said is right. You can't just accuse someone with false evidence and a judgmental character, and just because he had scars and have an angered look, doesn't mean he's the sole culprit so easily." The man was about to retaliate again, but he was cut off by Hanagaki again. "Did you even bother to ask your wife if this boy really was the one who groped her? Heck, the boy has a point. Why would a teenager like him would try and grope an older woman who was very much 10 years older than him?" Hanagaki points out the obvious. "He's a teenager," the woman yelps in surprise. The woman was deeply embarrassed that she falsely accused a teenager of groping her. She was just creating a ruckus at this inn so his husband wouldn't ignore her and maybe earn some compensation from a random stranger for such a false accusation. But it changes everything now if the boy is a teenager. The woman then just storms out of the argument with his husband snaked on her left arm and leaves the two boys alone in deafening silence. Honestly, some people are too arrogant for their own good. Hanagaki sighs in response. He turns to the other guy, but when he did, he was already walking away. "Hey, where do you think you're going?" Hanagaki calls out. "Back to my room, dipshit," he snaps back, not even looking back at him, "and stop getting into someone's business. I didn't need your help, nor will I ever thank you." And with that, he storms away, leaving Hanagaki on his own in this quiet hallway. "Really? Not even at least a thank you?" he deadpans in his mind. But he didn't have time to complain in his thoughts. He came to this inn to rest and heal, so the uncomfortable shaken away from him, and to the hot springs he goes. A few weeks passed, and he was finally healed. He's certain that he took way too long on healing. He's got to catch up soon, or he'll fail behind on his work. Currently in his room, cleaning up after himself, getting into his uniform, eating breakfast, and readying to leave, he strolls back down to the staircase down to the lobby and returns the key to the room he was in. It was certainly an eventful and peaceful week, but he can't sit still for too long either. At the gate, he bows down to an attendant seeing him off, not before sparking Flint behind him. A tradition of giving him good luck. How nice of them. And with that, he scurries off away from the inn and only watches as the inn becomes smaller and smaller to view. It was mid-afternoon when he left, but he was already given his mission by Okobio on the way. Something about people disappearing left and right at the Kyoto prefecture. When he arrived at the location, he began investigating and interrogating the locals about the disappearances of some people. Some claim it to be just a simple hostage kidnapping or mild disappearance, but due to the amount of them disappearing each night, nobody could tell if it was normal anymore. One or two civilians in particular, who survives the night of disappearances, spoke of a bright light catching their attention before their other companions disappear entirely. Another one of which was that one of the civilians spoke of their encounter with the disappearances and heard crashing sounds before someone disappears entirely, like the sound of glass shattering and followed by the echoes of those who disappear. And it would seem like the ones who disappear would usually be ones with pretty faces. As per Hanagaki's observation, the ones who survive the disappearances, well, not to be rude, were not much to look at, but with the image of the disappearances of others, they certainly looked pleasing to the eyes, be it male or female. It certainly was an interesting find. After the afternoon of investigation, he stations himself at the most recent location of disappearances, hoping to catch a glimpse of the demon causing these disappearances. And he was right. Gunshots and crashing sounds were heard from afar. Startled, Hanagaki began heading towards the location of the sounds. The crashing and such were so loud it was deafening and irritating to hear. Like a fork scratching on a plate type of annoying sound. But apart from the crashing sound, the other sound was rather odd. The sound of gunshots. "Get back here, you bastard!" A rough and annoyed voice echoed from the location of the sound, "I'ma lop your head off, right here and now." Somehow, the voice sounded familiar. When he arrived, he finds two individuals. One was the demon, from what he can assess, uses some sort of glass type of blood demon art, while the other was someone he met rather familiarly at a familiar inn. Him? Somehow, he finds it rather tiring, even just by encountering the boy he met at the inn a few weeks ago is enough to tire him out completely. Their first interactions weren't quite pleasant nor joyful, it was rather abruptly ragged. "Filthy human, you're filthy," the demon complains as he dodges every swing of the guy's Nichiren blade whilst dodging and deflecting bullets. The demon the boy was fighting was rather elegant and beautiful in his form. He wore a very pale light blue nagagi, with a dark metallic blue haori and grayish-black hakama. His skin was pale white. His hair was as glossy as silk with its navy blue color, and his eyes almost looked like they were blind if it weren't for it very hard to figure out his pupils. Its eyes were almost marble-like. Its pupils were so faint it was hard to tell if he was blind or not. Hanagaki finds this rather surprising, apart from encountering the snappy guy from the inn. He didn't expect guns to be used as a weapon in the Demon Slayer Corps, since slaying demons mostly require the sharp parts of the blade, but if he's using a gun, then it must be special for his breathing techniques. He silently observes a little, trying to get enough information regarding the demon. He somehow sees him using some sort of invisible barrier to deflect the bullets and the swings, and when the swing of the blade was too strong, it would make a crashing sound. So this demon uses some sort of glass blood demon art, he ponders. Quietly observing, the demon then conjures a few invisible barriers beside the boy, trapping him in one place, and several glass shard spikes were aimed toward the boy. Blood demon art. Luminescent shotgun. Several shards move so quickly toward the boy. Without hesitation, Hanagaki jumps to the rescue. Hikari no Kakyu, 6th form. Illumination dance. From the jump above the building, as he lands, a ball of bright light was formed in front of the boy due to continuous spinning and either deflected or broke the several glass spikes hurled towards him upon impact, saving the boy from danger. Due to the bright light, the demon was slightly blinded by it. Being blinded by such light, it jumps back in alert of the newcomer. "Why you? How dare you blind the great me with that ridiculously annoying light? It snaps back in irritation, snarling at Hanagaki. He doesn't pay attention to such comments, so he pays half of his attention to the boy behind him. You all right? He asks, his head tilting slightly while looking slightly behind him. It shocks the boy from his trance and partial effect of the bright light, returning his attention to the raven-haired boy. You again? I told you before, I don't need anyone's help, he replies in anger, moving in a twirl to break the invisible barriers beside him to free him from his cornered situation. And don't get in my way, this one's mine, he snaps back, moving forward and pushing Hanagaki slightly backward in a rude and painful push. Hanagaki almost trips and falls from the said push as he frowns at the actions of the aggressive guy in front of him. Okay, sure, maybe you didn't need it, but I couldn't leave you to fight the demon when you were stuck in that situation, he explains himself, pointing his blade towards the demon again, and it is best if we deal with demon together. If what I gathered from your fight with him, his blood demon art is going to be a bit of a hassle to deal with, so our best bet is to work Tojith. Shut up, he gets cut off. What I said is final. This one's mine. You just stand back and watch me do the work, pretty boy. He scoffs in reply as he lunges towards the demon. Wah, pretty boy? Hanagaki guffaws at the statement. He watches as the guy just keeps swinging and pointing the gun towards floors to the corner and aims the demon in the direction he wishes. But somehow, the demon keeps going in the opposite direction of the bullet aims. Arg, stand still, ya fucking demon. The guy groans in irritation as he tries to aim for the neck of the demon, not realizing several shards were aimed towards his back. Alarmed, Hanagaki jumps in before it could pierce the boy from behind. Hikari no Kakyu, 7th form. Starfall, Angel's Wrath. Like a shooting star, it aims towards the sky as it deflects several of the shards away from the boy. Sweet, Hanagaki exclaims internally. Hey, what did I say? Stand back, shrimp. The boy scowls again whilst his attention is still focused on the demon in front. What the hell? Could it care for you to at least say thank you? Hanagaki yells back, continuing to assist the boy from the back. But as the battle continues, he realizes something strange. It's not really attacking as the same as much. Why? He wonders as he keeps deflecting shards after shards. We have been fighting for a good while, but it almost feels like he's... Suddenly, the air became more menacing and the atmosphere felt like it dropped almost quickly for his liking. Retreat, he immediately warns the guy, but knowing he probably won't listen to him, he hastily grabs his arm and yanks him backward with him. Blood demon art. Diamond flowers. Sudden large glass-shaped flowers bloomed all of a sudden from beneath the footing of where the boy was currently. Luckily, it was evaded quickly. It forms of a water lily, beautiful but dangerously deadly, that it could have pierced them or trapped them inside and killed instantly if not evaded correctly. What the hell? The boy stammers in surprise at the huge formation of a blood demon art. It was more impressive than the demon in front of them made. Then that means... Well, Tilda, you're certainly a very perceptive demon slayer if I ever encountered one. Another demon has arrived. From behind the demon they were fighting, a glass-formed portal appeared, and what exits is a female demon, blood on her mouth and fingers, and in her left hand was a leg of a woman, slightly bitten a chunk and ripped off from its victim's legs. She wore the same colors of the nagagi of the former demon. But this time, she wore a pale light blue kimono with a strawberry red obi wrapping around her and held tight by a white abajime. Her hair was slightly different from the former. It was rather darker at the tips of her hair, going black, but still beautiful. Behind her was a large bow flowing gracefully against the wind. It was so transparent it looked like glass. Her hair is decorated with several pins and accessories that she almost looked like an Warren from the early ages. Maybe she was. One-sama, the former demon exclaims in joy at the sudden arrival of the new demon. It calls One-sama. You seem to be in a pickle, little brother. Were they that troublesome? she asks rather calmly while handing the leg towards him to eat. Yes, they were. I'm so sorry for being useless. It bows in shame as it crunches on the leg given. Disgusting, Hanagaki and the other boy thought in unison. I accept your apology, little one. Leave this to me now, she calmly states as she ruffles the demon's head. Once she was done, her expression turned sharp and menacing, almost intimidating them with the terrifying glare it gave them. Care to take me on, midgets? She insults them with such an egotistical tone and taunt. Hanagaki was affected by it, but being part of a gang before, he was used to such snarky comments and insults, so he was able to calm down from it immediately. On the other hand, what did ya call me, bitch? The boy immediately lunges towards her, shooting 3 bullets at her. She dodges effortlessly as she also moves towards him gracefully, like gliding on a piece of ice, skating on the ground. He aims for her neck as he approaches, nearing her so easily. And just then, crash! The demon disappears entirely as the blade swings towards her. She disappears completely as her figure shatters into 1,000 pieces of glass shards. What the? Dumbfounded, he didn't realize that he had fallen into a trap. Before Hanagaki knew it, the boy's surroundings suddenly glowed bright and the glass flowers bloomed beneath him swiftly, encaging him inside the glass like flower attack. His body remains unmoving inside as a body stuck in time inside an ice. Surprised, the woman appears finally from the illusion and stood beside the glass like flower. Pathetic, so immature and short-tempered. You're one of the worst types of demon slayers I have ever met. She pats the glass like flower, speaking to the immobile demon slayer. You need to be calmer at times like this, and now, look where it landed you, cackling wickedly in a soft tone, hiding her devious grin and amusement behind her pale light blue kimono. But you're certainly much more different than this pathetic waste of space, not to mention, she pauses, focusing her attention on Hanagaki. Her eyes were similar to that of the former demon, and what he could see was that the female demon was observing him from head to toe. You look certainly wonderful. Those blue orbs of yours really stand out with your raven hair, she compliments him. It's hard to believe someone as beautiful is working like a demon slayer. Such a waste of beauty. Her eyes gleam with want. Her eyes shone like a predator as she eyed him. Alarmed by such a stare, Hanagaki readies himself and forms a stance. But worry not, child, for I'll take good care of such beauty. She flips her hands behind her, readying to pounce on him. So stay still, and I'll take care of that beauty for you as a frozen corpse. She swiftly ran towards him. Summoning from beside her was the same blood demon art of the former demon and was aimed directly on all sides of escape for Hanagaki. Of course, he realizes she's driving him into a corner. She wants to capture her. But unfazed by such tactics, he jumps back instead of dodging sidewards. Shard after shard, while still being aimed at every surface Hanagaki can dodge and land on. Some were also aimed towards him that he has to deflect them back whilst dodging and watching where he lands, or else he'll land on her trap. Hikari no Kakyu, 3rd form. Heaven Piercers. Several bright slashes were aimed at a barrage of shards aimed at him, either shattering or deflecting the incoming attacks. Hee, you're well adept slayer. I'm well impressed. Your beauty matches your wits and skill. However, she cuts her words as suddenly she jumps into a portal and disappears into the wind. Distressed at the sudden disappearance of the demon, Hanagaki heightens his atmosphere awareness in order to locate where she would pop out, when all of a sudden several portals popped out, circling and trapping Hanagaki on his spot. Blood demon art. Parallel apparition. The female demon had multiplied at several of the portals, aiming to capture him. Hikari no Kakyu, 8th form. Summer's Joy. Spinning in 360, several slashes formed in all directions, and it shattered every single portal and the female demon's clones of herself along with it, disappearing into thousands of glass shards. When he had stopped spinning, it took a few seconds for him to realize. None of them were her. he panicked inside his head. Then that means? SHRRFFF tilde. Suddenly feeling rooted in place, he looks beneath him and sees a lump of hard glass forming around his feet, trapping him in place. You're way too naive to figure me out. Thus, your downfall. The female demon finally came out from the portal, with a winning smirk plastered on her face for her victory. Worry not, I won't eat you just yet. I'll just trap you forever in my mirror forever before I do kill you out of boredom. She lifts her hand in the air, and the ground beneath Hanagaki shook and slowly glowed a bright light. Until then, how about enjoying yourself with a bit of chit-chat with that pathetic demon slayer from before for your final goodbyes? And just as her hand clenched, a large glass-like flower bloomed and trapped Hanagaki inside of it, remaining immobile and unmoving, being stuck inside. A few seconds later, Hanagaki feels himself slowly submerging into darkness and was followed by being swallowed by a bright light. The next thing he knew, he had landed face first on a white floor. Ugh tilde oh, he groans in pain. He lifts his head first and rubs his face to soothe the stinging pain of landing on his face first to the ground. Where am I? He wonders as he sits up from his position, realizing he is somewhere in a white void, completely bare of anything at all. He glances left and right to see if anyone or anything was there, and that is until he heard screaming. Ah! The demon slayer from before was running around, trying to hit his head onto something to try and break whatever he is trying to destroy. Oh, he's in here. I thought he had died, he acknowledges in himself. It would seem as if being trapped in this woman's blood demon art lets her keep her hostages inside what she said about her mirror and keeps them as food storage for her to eat later on. And assuming those portals she creates, it's the same way she abducts pretty people with following glass shattering. Now it would all make sense, he mutters under his breath. Once he got up, he hears a loud thud that the ground slightly shook from such force. Damn it, just fucking damn it. The boy punches the ground harshly, obvious that he's frustrated at the situation he's in. Damn it, damn it, damn it. He keeps punching the ground harshly that blood had started flowing out of his scraped fists. Hey, stop that. You're only hurting yourself badly like this. Hanagaki immediately takes his left arm off the ground to stop it from being bruised even further. Why do you care? Leave me alone, he shouts at him, swinging his bruised hand at his face to push him away. Of course, Hanagaki moves away without his rude push and just stumbles slightly backward. All right then, bleed to your heart's content for all I care, he sarcastically mused inside his thoughts as he sits a little farther away from him while the guy keeps punching the ground aggressively. Hanagaki ponders in an Indian sit as to what to do next or how to escape. A few minutes had passed, and Hanagaki was running out of patience with his fellow prisoner. 5 minutes ago, he was conjuring a plan to escape whilst dealing with the demons outside after, but his thoughts kept getting interrupted and jumbled by consistent punching and smashing on the ground by the other occupant of the room. Or void, whatever suits the description of their situation. When will he cease on the punching? Hanagaki groans inside his thoughts, just waiting it out until he finishes. He never thought he'd stop until the room became silent and the thudding noises had ceased their loud tremors. He turns around to see what happened if the guy had fainted or something, and none to his surprise, the guy just stopped, his fist still clenched to the ground, but he remained unmoving. It got him curious and concerned that he approached the boy on impulse. Hey, you. Useless, you just had to be fucking useless, he mutters to himself. It was a quiet rant on his own that nobody would hear if not that there are only the two of them in the very same place. Whoa, hold on, why are you calling yourself that? Hanagaki tries to console him and remove his bleeding hand off the ground, only for it to be swatted away again. Huh? What's it to you? Did I ask you to care? He bellows back in anger, somehow irritated that Hanagaki was just concerned about the boy's immature behavior and thinking. Do I need to ask permission to feel concerned? Because I'm certain I don't. Hanagaki retaliates, a frown forming in disbelief at the boy's way of thinking. He scoffs instead in reply, "So what? Came here to boast about how good you are? Looking down on me, ya shrimp," he remarks on his concern for boasting, which infuriated him so much at such accusation. "Why, I didn't ask about your well-being just to boast or look down on you." Hanagaki sits beside him angrily, but he faced backward towards the guy, too pissed to look him in the eye properly, or he just might implode on the guy. "I'm asking why you're calling yourself useless. That doesn't sound like something a person should call themselves whilst agitated," he replies solemnly and calmly to sound genuine towards the hothead. "TCH" was his only response. A moment of silence echoes between the two. Not one uttered another word, but Hanagaki felt something was off about the guy, something about calling himself useless with such a pained expression, and agitated emotions triggered his worry and concern for him. Hesitantly, he replies, "Care to talk about it?" he offers. He waited for a response, but knowing the guy, he probably wouldn't. But he's willing to give the guy the benefit of the doubt that he would reply to his concern. And he did. He spoke in a grumbling and soft mumbles that Hanagaki swore he thought he heard stomach grumbling if the direction of the sound didn't come from his upper body rather than where the stomach was. "What was that? I didn't quite catch you," he requests again, to which the guy just grumbles further in reply for Hanagaki, not hearing him heighten his tone again for him to hear. "I can't use breathing techniques," he admits. "Eh?" A few moments of silence were heard again, but now the two were facing each other properly. The other guy remains to look down, not once looking up to look Hanagaki in the eye respectively. "I joined the Demon Slayer Corps after my brother. Our family was killed by our transformed mother that only me and my brother were left alive," he narrates in a quiet and soft tone. "When he became a demon slayer, he became so strong and powerful that joined as well right after him. But," he looks to the side while still his head is lowered, trying not to let Hanagaki see his face, "even with all the training I was put through, I never got to do a breathing technique." "Huh." Hanagaki listens attentively, assessing each word he spoke out himself. The truth he probably never revealed to anyone at all. "Ha, even my brother says I'm his useless brother, even to the point he keeps doing things to drive me out or leave the Corps." His voice croaked a little amid his narration, but it was quick so no one could have picked it up if they weren't listening closely. "But I continue to be one so I could become a Hashira to apologize to my brother and get recognized by him. And yet," he stops. His body was shaking slightly. Quiet and small hiccups were heard from him with his head still lowered, unwilling to look up at him. But Hanagaki doesn't mind. "I won't be able to become one if I could not do breathing techniques." His voice sounded lost and miserable, then small droplets had formed in his eyes despite him still looking down. "How am I gonna get the chance to apologize if I'm this fucking useless?" His body was shaking badly. Tears had formed and his voice sounded so gloomy and distressingly frustrated. A moment of silence pierced the void for a few minutes. Then, "Let me ask you this." Hanagaki straightens his back firmly as he spoke. "How many demons have you slain?" "Huh?" The boy was utterly confused by such question. "Why are you?" "Just answer me," Hanagaki cuts in. "Guh, I don't know, 12 to 20 so far by now," he admits hesitantly and unsure. "Civilians saved?" "I don't know, plenty." "Did you do this all on your own?" "Yeah, wait, what's even going on?" "Listen," he interrupts with a firm voice, "these missions you've completed, the demons you've killed, the civilians you saved, if you could count this much of your deed, then how are you useless?" he asks, his head tilting slight sidewards with a warm smile. At this question, he began slowly raising his head to look at him properly. "A demon slayer may use breathing techniques as a way to slay demons easily, so they're quite gifted, and that is very much true," he points out, taking the boy's hand gently upwards that he flushed slightly at the sudden touch. "But do you know who I find more gifted?" "Who?" he he replies, curiosity in his tone. Demon slayers like you who don't use breathing techniques, he admits with a blinding smile that the boy winces at the brightness slightly. Why, you're just saying that to make me feel better. He tries to deny such sincerity, feeling rather bitter still about his situation. Of course not. Demon slayers like you work harder than the rest just to aid citizens in need, saving others from treacherous demons. Slayers like you who train their weaknesses and shortcomings to the fullest so they can save people to the point they become strong and capable is what I find admiring, caressing both his hands with glee and fascination twinkling in his eyes, devoid of lies and deception. Heck, I bet even the first few Hashiras back in the days didn't have breathing techniques before, so imagine them. He points out into the white void, slaying demons without breathing techniques, and rose to the ranks of Hoshiras with the said information. Hopeful feeling bloomed inside the boy's chest, fluttering from such information dawning on him. Hanagaki looks down from his visualization of the first Hashiras and focuses back on the boy in front of him. What I'm trying to say is that no matter if you can use breathing techniques or not, it doesn't matter if the number of people you saved was plenty, and in any way, for it to go by with, I'd say that person isn't useless at all. He beams at the thought. Closing his eyes in his Indian sitting formation whilst the boy's hands were still on his being held gently and warmly, Hanagaki almost looked majestically beautiful at the boy's view. With your strength, you surpass others far better who rely too much on their breathing techniques rather than their original strength and skills. With a warm and comforting smile, somehow, Hanagaki looked like a bright light emanated from him, looking angelic and beautiful. He smiles back fondly at the boy. You're not useless, do you hear me? The way of speaking should have sounded like a demand or an order, and yet it sounded like a soft and sincere command. Something the boy didn't think would exist, to have someone speak to you in a gentle and sincere, soft command. Flushed with embarrassment, his constricting feeling before now fully dissipated within him as he takes back his hands away from Hanagaki. Realizing what Hanagaki just did, he too became a little flustered. I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have held your hand for that long. That was so rude of me. He was panicking at what the boy would say in such an affectionate manner when they're not even friends or even introduced to each other yet. How embarrassing, he mulls within himself. As if sensing what he was thinking, the boy sighs in response. Genya. Huh. Shinazugawa Genya, that's my name. Hanagaki blinks a few times before realizing what he has just done and beamed at the improvement of their situation. Hanagaki, my name is Hanagaki Takemichi. Nice to meet you. He takes out his hand for a handshake. Despite being flustered, the boy, Genya, took his hand in return for the handshake. A few minutes later, they spoke to each other about how to get out and deal with the demons once they do get out. They both use blood demon art similar to that of glass and mirrors. The younger demon uses mostly shields of glass that are so hard to figure out where he would have placed them, and barrages of long, sharp shards of glass, Hanagaki points out. While the other one, the bitch earlier, does use the other demon arts too, but she uses them as portals that camouflage her location. Those deadly flower thingies are also a matter of concern, as well as her use of those glass shards to make fakes, or illusions, Genya points out as well. It took a few minutes before the two had light bulbs brightening beside each other, and a plan was formed. In the middle of the night, Tanjiro had just finished slaying a demon alongside his sister. It was quite a handful lot of demons. It was incredibly tiring as it had a blood demon art capable of copying its opponent's attacks, regardless if it was a demon's or a demon slayer. His first encounter with a demon was astonishing. When he had used a breathing technique, he copied said attack with a water attack to counter his. When he was stuck in pinch, Nezuko saved him and attacked as well. But the drawback, his strength immediately matched Nezuko's strength, so it was tough to battle. He had to fight him without breathing techniques, but in the end, he managed to slay him and end that episode. With exhaustion evident in his posture and heavy breaths, he slumps down to the ground alongside Nezuko, exhausted over the 2 hours of battling. He was certainly strong, wasn't he, Nezuko? He turns his attention to his sister with a tired smile. MPH, Nezuko agrees behind her bamboo muzzle, smiling behind the muzzle. Tanjiro takes a few moments to breathe, looking above the night sky. He watches as his crow circles around him, waiting for him to gather himself for his next mission. Whilst watching the glimmering stars of this cold night, in the middle of the forest, he thinks of his friend, Takemichi-san. He looks a little to the left, to see if a crow with a letter might arrive, but within a few seconds, nothing arrived. He sighs. I hope you're doing fine, Takemichi-san, Tanjiro thought deeply, praying silently as he rests for the safety of his friend. Outside of the mirror, the two were trapped in. The female demon was admiring herself on her own, mumbling to her inner self how beautiful she looked at a summoned mirror she created in thin air. Behind her was her supposed brother, eating a few limbs from her hunt earlier, munching as bones crunched and skin tears were heard. I wanted to ask something, elder sister. The male demon spoke in a meek tone. His tone sounded as if he was asking for her permission. What is it, dear brother? The hall? Not enough, she asks, not once looking back, and keeps admiring her appearance, adjusting her hair, smudging her face, and whatnot. Not that, but why did you spare the raven-haired demon slayer? You normally don't spare anyone at all due to their sickening lack of beauty, he points out as he punches a finger whilst asking, sitting in the middle of the forest on a large boulder rock in a small clearing. The female demon halts her adjustments to her appearance for a moment and ponders. I don't know. What you say is true, though. I normally don't spare demon slayers or any human with hideousness. It sickens me to find them lurking around, she hurls in disgust, evident of her displeasure towards such monstrosities. But if I had to point out why, well, maybe because of one thing. She turns around with a soft smile on her face, but her soft smile emanates such sorrow and sadness that it almost looked pitiful, surprising the younger sibling at the rare expression on her face. He reminds me of a certain someone disgustingly hideous that I will never, ever forgive despite her smile. Her hands were clenched so hard that she starts to bleed, ignorant to such bruise forming since it would just heal afterward. An image of a man flashes through her memories, one who smiled so bright he looked like an enigma. With striking features of blonde hair and blue eyes, he looked like an angel. It sickens me to remember his face, she curses inside her thoughts. The female mirror demon was so immersed in her anger that she failed to see the glowing light forming on her mirror, where she kept her prisoners or hostages for her personal food for later. Hikari no Kakyu, Ju no Kata. Endgame, Sun's Wrath. Without warning, the mirror broke into millions of shards, followed by a huge, blinding bright light, stunning the two demons outside the mirror prison of movement, as well blinding them on the spot, startled and confused at the sudden occurrence. You ready, Genya-san? Hanagaki asks from the slowly dimming bright light. A smirk formed on his face, a stance from the previous form changed to another, readying to strike again. Hell yeah, let's do this, Genya exclaims enthusiastically, reloading his gun once more, readying his Nichiren blade, and forming a stance. Once the light had died down, the two demons huddled together, wary of what was to come next. How in the world did you get out? The female demon demanded in anger, but quickly composes herself off of her anger and readies herself as well as her brother. No matter, I'll just capture you guys again. She readies herself with a few shards, followed by the male demon summoning glass like whips at his behest, readying to strike, and this time, I'll be sure to devour you immediately myself. Little Blue, she taunts at Takemichi, which unfazed him and still readies himself, recalling the plan he and Genya formed within the mirror. Step 1. They attack each other for a moment, and let them use their demon arts for a few minutes courtesy of Genya's suggestion. They leaped forward. Takemichi took on the female demon while Genya took on the younger, aiming his gun at the incoming glass whips and breaking them with each shot, but it didn't deter the demon as he kept summoning more while keeping distance. Hanagaki, on the other hand, slash after slash, leaps after leaps, hoping for the female demon to take out the specific demon art. Step 2. Hanagaki has to make the female demon use her blood demon art that creates illusions and hand the summoned shard of the blood demon art to Genya. It confused him why he wants her demon art, but Genya only told him that he has plans for it and told him to trust him about it, which he did. The female demon then disappeared from her portals and disappeared from his line of sight, indicating her trying to jump at him one more time with that specific art. Blood demon art. Parallel apparition. From all sides, one by one, several clones of her appeared and attacked him one by one, pouncing at him at a quick pace. But Hanagaki doesn't have to attack them all. He only needed a piece of the demon art from this illusion, and thus, whilst dodging the other incoming illusions, he aimed for the nearest one near him. Swinging his blade to the right with great force, it shatters to few pieces, which Hanagaki quickly catches the remains and runs back to Genya. "Oh, leaving so soon? Not on my watch, human," she laughs in joy, amused at the fleeing form of Hanagaki. Within a few minutes of searching for Genya, he finds him defending against the whips and incoming shards barrage coming towards him. "Genya-san," he calls out, which catches Genya's attention as he also runs towards Hanagaki with a grateful and relieved grin. Running past each other, Hanagaki passes the shards towards Genya, and they split again. Step 3. They split the two demons. Hanagaki takes on the female demon, while Naya takes on the male demon. "Come get me, you whore!" Hanagaki taunts the female demon as he runs away from the direction of Naya's fight. It angers her for being called such a crude description of her and rushes after him in anger. While he fights and distracts her from the other side, Genya shuffles the shards in his hands, feeling the shards to be a lot colder than normal glass. "I hope this is the right one, Hanagaki," he spoke within his mind, hoping the pieces of the shard were the residue of the blood demon art he needed to defeat the demon in front of him. "Awa, what's the matter, human? Cold stiff that your partner isn't here to help you," he mocks him, followed by an amused cackle. "Hell, you can't even use breathing techniques, so what hopes you that you can defeat me with such a lousy weapon and a primitive firearm? You won't get far with those pitiful things without breathing techniques." He kept on laughing at Genya's weakness, pointing out all of his flaws of being a demon slayer. He was about to snap again when he recalled what Hanagaki told him. "No matter if you can use breathing techniques or not, it doesn't matter. If the number of people you saved was plenty, and in any way, for it to go by with, I'd say that person isn't useless at all. With your own strength, you surpass others far better who rely too much on their breathing techniques rather than their original strength and skills. You're not useless, do you hear me?" "Oh, I hear you loud and clear, Hanagaki." Genya smirks from his stance, shuffling the shards once more. The male demon frowns at the reaction he saw from the pitiful demon slayer. "You're right, I can't use breathing techniques like all my peers." He looks up with a smug look on his face as he raises his right hand that held the shards from the female demon's blood art. "But I have something better than anyone else from the Demon Slayer Corps to help me lop that head off your shoulders." He tosses the shards lightly up and down from his hands, taunting him of what was in his hands. And being the male demon using mirror and glass demon art, he recognizes the residue of glass shards on his hands. What is he doing with that? The male demon gulps anxiously, wary of what he is about to do with the shards. "Lookin' anxious there, fucker. Well then, want to know what I do best without breathing techniques?" He taunts again as the shards fall to his right palm one last time. And in an eerily quiet few seconds, Genya gulps the shards down his throat. It surprises the demon, but he quickly changes to an unimpressed expression. "Stupid human, eating a blood demon art could literally poison or deadly to eat. He'll die soon enough," he concludes to himself, but he suddenly felt shivers go down his spine, rooting him to the spot. Wait, what is this? Why am I shivering? What is this aura I'm feeling? He wonders within his mind. The demon slayer in front of him suddenly changed after devouring his sister's residue blood demon art. His aura changed. It had changed similar to that of her sister's aura, suffocating and overwhelming whenever she was mad or pissed. No way, did he? A low, deep rumble of laughter was heard from a still Genya. He lifts his head slowly, and what catches the demon off guard was that the demon slayer had not only changed his aura similar to that of his older sister, but his appearance had changed as well. He looked like, "Care to take me on, you shitfuck of a demon?" He points his gun at him, which had changed into a glass-like looking gun, and his eyes had now changed similar to that of his older sister's. This demon slayer, Genya Shinazugawa, was not any normal demon slayer. To him, he can't use breathing techniques as he is incapable of using them. But he uses a different method, and that was to able to consume demons' blood art or flesh to use their arts for his own momentarily use. And right now, Genya has now capabilities similar to that of the mirror demon siblings. The demon was so shocked he didn't see the demon slayer lunging at him with great speed, awfully similar to her sister's speed of attack, and had a second to react before his hand was lopped off, followed by several gun firing, but it misses him, aimed at his sides and behind. 3 glass-like flower formed from behind, which further heightened the demon's defensive instinct and back away. Genya chases him down further and further until suddenly, from the shadows formed by the trees, he disappears from the shadows, halting the demon momentarily. Where the hell is he? In a state of panic, he glances in all directions for any signs of the demon slayer when from a distance he hears the screams of someone familiar to him. One-chan, worried for his older sister, foregoing the demon slayer he's fighting, he rushes towards the sounds of his older sister, who he concludes is having trouble fighting the other slayer, and possibly could be getting killed. He reaches the location of a small clearing in the forest to see his older sister pinned to the ground and the other slayer readying to decapitate her. Her sister was frozen stiff, so in anger, he rushes quickly to her aid and summons several shards and whips aimed at the raven-haired slayer, who bounces back towards the trees due to the whip hitting him harshly. He was fuming, but his worries for his sister override his anger as he turns his attention towards his sister, flustered and distressed. "One-chan, are you all right?" he asks hastily, palming her face, but when he suddenly touched her cheek, she immediately crumbles into a million mirror shards, and what was left in front of him was nothing but a small boulder the size of a head. "What? To think you fell for that." Without notice and time to react, 3 shots of the gun were aimed at all sides. 3 glass-like flowers formed and corner him to the spot, and without hesitation, Genya swoops in from above and decapitates him from behind. Step 4. Specifically for Genya, use the demon art of the female demon and use the illusions to trick the younger demon. The movements were so abrupt and quick that the younger demon had no chance to retaliate or react as his head rolled off the ground, slowly disintegrating into dust. He watches the demon slayer wipe of the blood off his blade as he swung it sharply. His blood residue splatters lightly to the ground. His body that was between the crystal flowers was disintegrating faster than his head. "Impossible, impossible, impossible!" the demon screamed in his thoughts at the situation he was in, unable to comprehend and accept the situation. "I cannot believe it. I will not accept this. How can a demon slayer use a demon art? It's impossible, impossible, impossible." His thoughts slowly disappeared alongside him as he panicked about what to do. But all he could do was watch the demon slayer as he stares at him with great anger and disgust. One-chan is gonna be horrified. If I die now, then I cannot die. I must not. He thinks to himself as he tries to look around at what to do next. If I die, One-chan is gonna be furious. She'll be hysterical. His thoughts were cut off as his head had now fully disintegrated, leaving no traces of the demon except for his clothes. Finally, Genya exhales in relief. He looks towards the still night sky for any signs of Hanagaki. Should I go and assist him? He wonders if he should. But when recalling their time of planning on what to do inside the demon's mirror prison, he recalls the look of determination on his face, like he knows what to use and do to defeat the female demon. He's got this, he smirks to himself, walking towards the direction where he last saw Hanagaki, see if he's done, while also waiting for the demonification to die down soon, or else he might burn from the sun due to his body still in demon mode. Meanwhile, on Hanagaki's side, minutes before the younger demon had died at the hands of Genya, she chases him whilst still attacking, cackling in joy. I need to get to an open clearing where the moon is in full view to use my techniques on her, Hanagaki repeats to himself as he dashes for a nearby clearing, which he found in a few seconds after, so he quickly hastens his movements towards the clearing. Once he arrived, he shifts his turn and faces the female demon with vigor and determination. She also stops in front of him, grinning with excitement. Finally come to accept your fate, little blue, she sing-songs at her prey, staring down at him with full joy that she'll finally get to destroy him, foregoing the moments of keeping him alive for a while and just devouring him completely. Not quite, I still have one last trick on my sleeve, he mocks back, readying a stance he knows will bring him to victory. The female demon just laughs hysterically, finding the demon slayer's attempt to even win against her amusing. Bahaha, whatever tricks you have won't fool me, boy. She readies herself as well, prepared to take on his feeble attacks and devour him then and there. In response, Hanagaki takes a breath in and raises his blade in the air, pointing directly at the moon and shining it against the light. Hikari no Kakayo, Ku no Kata. Distortion mirrors, elusive strike. And by that, a bright light shone on the blade and blinded the demon momentarily, and once she recovered from her blindness, she gasps at the situation before her. Yes, in front of her, there were 9 versions of the demon slayer, confusing her all too completely. Without seconds to lose, the clones rushed toward her, confusing her too much on which is which. Her vision was already quite blurry due to the effect of the technique, and the amount of the demon slayer's clones is hindering her focus on which to attack at. Ugh, which one? She was getting frazzled on what do that she immediately aimed several shards in all directions without proper aim and shot the instantly. It only hit 3 of the clones when all of a sudden, a chill went down her spine. Hikari no Kakiyu, go no Kata. Hyperspeed glare. She couldn't react quickly enough as the demon slayer lunges from behind and decapitates her at blinding speed. Her head had a second to react before it realized it was cut off and was now rolling down the ground. Her body was also slowly disintegrating as her head disintegrated too. No way, no way. He can also use illusions? Only when her head had been decapitated that she registered what the demon slayer had done. Not again, not again. Why everything I find beautiful is always trying backstabs me. She complains and wails in anger at the situation she was in. Myro, where the hell are you? I need you too. Her eyes widen in fear as she suddenly feels her little brother's presence from a distance slowly disappear. This brought her into hysterical laughter. Ha, 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 no way, my brother, he's been defeated. She laughs maniacally at the situation she was now in, unable to comprehend, and had now completely gone mad whilst slowly disintegrating. He's gone, he's taken away from me. Once again, my life is ruined by the most beautiful things I find. Once again, beauty has taken everything from me. Arag, she groans louder in anger, frustrated, saddened, and feeling at a loss on what to do. Why, she repeats in frustration, why is it every time I find something beautiful, it takes away the thing I hold? First my family's reputation, next my parents, next my brother, and now, she pauses, her eyes widening in realization at a memory she now suddenly recalls. My life, she looks down at the ground at the realization. Hanagaki can only watch as the demon cries out her frustrations, fearing her time as a human. all the most beautiful things, he was most beautiful, but now it was him who took everything from me. She spoke in a soft tone, strained of any emotion. Hanagaki sat beside the disintegrating head, somehow feeling likely to talk to the dying demon before her departure. "Would you like to share it with me?" he offers. The demon looks at him blankly, but immediately changes to anger. "Ha! What do I have to share with you? Your beautiful blue eyes, they're the one who took everything from me. You," she complains at him. Her eyes looked dazed from reality, as if she was seeing someone else other than Hanagaki. Realizing this, he responded. "Did the beautiful man you spoke of really take everything from you?" He spoke softly, trying to sympathize with her. She quietly gasps, her eyes now gleaming, now seeing the reality in front of her, and in front of her was the demon slayer that had decapitated her, and the blue eyes she found sickeningly beautiful were looking at her with pure innocence, sympathy and pity that it broke the wall within her and spoke of her past. She told her story about how she used to be a famous woman. Her family was famous too, and they had all the things they could ever want with just a snap. But sadly, it all changed so quickly. When she was human, she used to admire every pretty thing that she decorate her room from top to bottom with fake jewels and pretty stuff down to the last detail that she'd forget to keep her allowance, forget her connection and anything around her. She assumes it started when her family had gotten a company contract that deals with jewels and such, similar to their family's business. She and her family were ecstatic to work with them. But all of a sudden, the company that they worked together with took away their glory and kicked them out of their contracts, claiming the work they have done for themselves. It led to her family being average and left to rot. But they managed to rise again in a few months and were now living a normal life, as any normal working family does. She didn't complain much as she still had the most beautiful things she had in her life with her. But the lovely family they had formed didn't last forever. Her parents had died in the hands of the things she also found beautiful. Her mother, who attended a party at her workplace, dies due to being stabbed by a silver mirror shard by a woman who assumed her mother to be having an affair with her husband. Her father died at the place he worked as a beautiful and elegant clothing store, and the store suddenly collapsed due to improper and unbalanced construction and killed him under the rubble. It frightened her to the core alongside her little brother when she heard what had happened to her parents. Due to their death, they were left with only a small amount of savings and were left at an orphanage. During her time there, she still tries to be positive. Attending college now, she tries to keep positive for her only younger brother. She still smiles as she always tells herself that a beautiful outcome will come forth soon for them and that they just have to be patient. And somehow, her prayers were answered. In the middle of the semester, she was asked out by the most beautiful man she had ever seen. Blonde hair that looked so natural and smooth to the touch, bright crystalline blue eyes that looked like gems, and a smile that was so strikingly bright that it radiates the sun. Her life changed completely. She and her brother had returned to the life they had before. Luxurious and beautiful, she thought her life had finally taken a wonderful turn. Only to be backstabbed once again. On an abandoned building with her brother, they were both shot by none other than her boyfriend. She was devastated at why he would do such a thing, only to find out he was the son of the company that backstabbed her family a long time ago and had only used her to get closer to her and retrieve the plans her family had for new pieces of jewelry and such and steal their work. And now that he didn't need to do so anymore since he got them, he chose to dispose of the two which were now left to rot, bleeding to death. That night, she lost all sense for loving anything beautiful, cursing at anything beautiful as a wretched curse, and vows to never let such stained beauty roam the planet. She pleads to herself to get a chance to enact revenge when suddenly, a strange man appeared in front of her and her brother. His bright plum red eyes glowed in the darkness like shimmering rubies, skin pale as porcelain, and hair dark as night. He wore a fancy suit and a white fedora, and his blazer hung loosely on his shoulders as he stares down at her and her bleeding brother. He offered her a chance to do what she must and turned her into a demon. With the chance she was given, she enacted revenge on anything beautiful, devouring it and keeping it for herself, even as to eat the entire family that destroyed her life alongside her brother. But in the end, no matter how much I enact revenge on anything that I find beautiful and eat them, I would still be haunted by it, and now, here I am, beauty taking everything away from me, she admits, exhaling in relief. Despite her body now disintegrated and her head now nearly gone, she somehow felt relieved to have that emotion she bottled up within her let out. I probably shouldn't have taken out my anger towards anything beautiful. Some of them probably were innocent, huh? She asks him as she stares right back at kind-looking demon slayer above her. You sure should have, Hanagaki responded softly, sadness and sympathy in his eyes. You had a wonderful personality to find beauty and hope in every little thing, and yet you end up here. The female demon scoffs at the remark snarkily, admitting to the truth. She waits for her moment of death when all of a sudden a hand had landed on her head and she looks up to see the demon slayer. Are you crying? She frowns at the reaction the demon slayer was doing, unable to comprehend such actions. Hanagaki sniffs and wipes the tear off his face. I am. Why? Why cry? Is there any reason for you to cry at all? Hanagaki continues to wipe his tears and snot off of him before responding. Of course I am. I'm crying in your stead, miss, he replies, his voice hitched at the very last. The female demon blinked dumbfoundedly at the demon slayer. He's crying for me? Why? She asks. You had a wonderful life, your struggles and your positive personality towards the bitter end. They were wonderfully beautiful, Miss Hanagaki admits. Hearing the story of how the woman had endured her life whilst being attacked by this world's ugliness and continuously looking at it as if it was the most beautiful thing was beautiful to hear. The female demon had begun crying now as well. No one, not once, had someone told her that her struggles and her will to fight were beautiful. She never imagines to have something like that about her to be found beautiful. Therefore, she wept in appreciation of the demon slayer's words. In hopes, Miss Hanagaki sniffs, in hopes in your next life. I pray that you continue to look at the world in beauty despite its ugliness. People like you are what makes it more beautiful, so please. Never give up such wonderful self of yours, and for your family, Hanagaki strokes the top head of the demon soothingly. And to the female demon, his hand felt gentle and warm, like how her mother used to do when she wept with sadness. She smiled, genuinely and content. I will. And with a tearful, soft, and saddened smile, she disappears, leaving only the dust of her body and head become one with the air. After the mission, Hanagaki and Genya had now gone on their separate ways, promising each other to write to one another if they can. Of course, Genya did tell Hanagaki of what he did to defeat the other demon, which greatly shocked him too. Well, it did explain why Genya's eyes were now similar to that of the mirror demon siblings. But Hanagaki just lets it slide off him and continues on his journey. Before he did, he wrote a letter to Tanjiro. He assumes he was expecting one a while ago, but due to being trapped in the mirror prison, he was unable to do so. And once he was done, he sent Okubio to deliver his letter to Tanjiro, describing the heartfelt and vigorous mission he recently had. And another demon was slain. Hanagaki takes a minute to intake a breather from his mission. He had just finished slaying the mirror demon siblings with Genya and the mission that was sent to him after his rest a few days ago. He has been exchanging letters with a lot of people now. First was Tanjiro, who he has been continuously exchanging with. Next was his master, Urakadaki-san. After that is the kind ramen shop owner he met at the recent mission he shared with Genya. And now Genya, too. Well, from a perspective standpoint, it doesn't seem much of people to send letters with, but he's happy enough to interact with them. Although, Hanagaki is currently walking down a random neighborhood, hiding his Nichiren blade to be seen as less inconspicuous and suspicious of the citizens wandering the night. It would seem there is going to be a festival soon. Several triangular banners stream from each and every side, hung everywhere in a welcoming manner in the slowly dimming night sky. The orange hue of the sky slowly disappears and turns charred black. He doesn't have a mission as of now because his crow, Okubio, is busy retrieving Tanjiro's reply from his previous letter. And right as he neared the town center, where most food stalls and alike are gathered, filled with some performers and interesting food stalls to choose from, several clouds of smoke and smells wafted within the air. It made Hanagaki's stomach grumble in hunger. "I should get some food first while I wait for Okubio," he mutters to himself, looking at all the available and multiple stall choices to choose from until he spots someone selling some potatoes, and based on its banner flag, it sells sweet potatoes, which instantly caught his attention and went towards it to purchase some. A few minutes later, he has his purchased sweet potatoes and was now sitting at a faraway place where no one could see him as he waited for Okubio. On the cold but comfy and peaceful night, he eats his potatoes in pure bliss and peace. The sound of rustling trees, the breeze of cold air brushing against his face, the sound of laughter and joy, partnered with musical instruments in the background, and the scene of dancing and laughing families, friends, or tourists made the moment more doable and peaceful. As if demons didn't even exist at the very moment, he thought to himself. And just as he was about to finish the last few pieces of soft, hot, and sweet potatoes, Okubio arrived with a caw, alerting Hanagaki of his arrival, a letter wrapped secured and tight on his leg. He takes out an arm for Okubio to perch on and land. Flaps of small winds were emitted after he landed with the letter attached. "Thank Okubio," Hanagaki spoke in a soft voice while taking a wrapped cloth from his pocket, unwrapping it to reveal some nuts, seeds, and fruits he bought at another nearby stall. "Here, have some and fresh up," he offers. Okubio beams in delight as he jumped off his arm and landed next to the available space on the bench where Hanagaki placed the cloth with nuts and seeds and began pecking at the available treatments and ate some in silence. Hanagaki watches him with a fond smile before returning to the letter given to him by Tanjiro. He unfolds the letter as it read as it goes. "Hey Takemichi-san, I hope you're doing all right tonight, and don't worry about me and Nezuko. We're completely well and okay as well." Hanagaki smiles at the last part, relieved he's still alive, not that he expects to die so soon. He's just nervous since he can't see a vision if Tanjiro will die anytime soon. But he trusts Tanjiro to live long enough, especially with the help of his demonized sister. "I read your letter and I was shocked to hear what you experienced. That must have been taxing to your stamina and control because the two sounded like they were part of the 12 Kazuki." 12 Kazuki? Hanagaki wonders what about that word. It's something he hasn't heard of, nor has he been informed by it by the core, Urokodaki-san, or by Okubio. If anything, it almost sounded like a good name for a gang if anything. He glances at Okubio for a moment to see him still devouring his meal before returning back to the letter. "You may be wondering what the 12 Kazuki is. Well, I was just recently informed by someone well-versed in our work. It would seem the 12 Kazuki is considered to be the 12 most powerful demons under Demon King. The way they performed their blood demon arts resembles the strength and power they wield. You'd be able to tell if they are part of the 12 Kazuki if you look at their eyes and see if there are numbers written on them. 12 powerful demons under the Demon King, huh?" he repeats inside his thoughts. If what Tanjiro say is true, then the demons he and Genya fought were nearly getting strong enough to be part of the 12 Kazuki then. Though he didn't see any numbers, if Tanjiro said so, then it would seem if the two were left alive any longer, they would have become one sooner or later. But thankfully, they didn't. But somehow, such detailed information is making Hanagaki suspicious. How in the world does this person know so much about this type of stuff? Are they a fellow demon slayer too, who has been working under the core for a long time, or... Hanagaki's eyes widen in thought. Getting off the bench he was leaning on and reading the paper more deeply. It's an impossible thought, but if it is, he halts in monologuing inside his mind and skims further onto the letter. But what the next paragraph spoke of sent a shiver down his spine. It may seem weird that the person who spoke to me about such information is so well informed of such knowledge. Well, that's the thing, Takemichi-san. The person whom I spoke to about such information is none other than another demon as well. He was right. It was another demon. But if he spoke to Hanagaki so causally, even as to share information, and not getting hurt or attacked by it, then that means, "They're good demons like Nezuko-san?" he exclaims inside his thought, amazed to hear another demon who's not on the Demon King's side. He just thought it was only Nezuko. He further reads the letter in fascination to learn more. Please do keep this a secret as well. I assure you, they are good demons. I heard from them that they escaped Musen's control and are now living off of a little amount of human blood and have more self-control better than others. They even saved me and helped me too at my work. Their names were Tamio and Yushiro. 2 demons? His legs kicked off in surprise at the information, because not only were there 2, but 3 demons not under the Demon King's control. It was such a fascinating find indeed. I plan to work together with them as the woman, Tamio, spoke to me of possibly creating a cure for Nezuko. I was fortunate to find them both. I see, Hanagaki muttered under his voice, relieved and happy to hear from him that he found someone to help him in curing Nezuko-san. They asked me to take blood samples from the 12 Kazuki in order to make the cure. I know it sounds risky and dangerous, but I am willing to put up with it if it means curing Nezuko and turning her back into a human. I do hope we meet again soon so I could introduce you to them. Hanagaki can only nod in response. He knows it was risky, but he believed in him enough that he'll do just fine as he kept on reading. He would like to meet her too and thank her for assisting Tanjiro in creating the cure for her sister one day. I hope you fare safely and well in your journeys. Until then, I hope to hear from you soon again. Sincerely, Tanjiro Kamado. He gently folds the letter again and places it in his pockets, just in time as it seems Okubio has just finished eating and so did he. He gets up and fixes himself to get ready for his next mission. You have my next mission, don't you, Okubio? He turns his head back around, and Okubio caws in response. East, east, a demon lurks. East, east, he repeats in a slightly louder voice. Swish. Hanagaki swings his Nichiren blade to the side, getting rid of the remaining blood on his blade before sheathing his blade back inside his seiya. In the middle of the forest again, he was chasing the demon he was tasked to slay, and the eerie and deafening silence was making him alert on all sides more than usual. Being a demon slayer has gotten him jumpier compared to when he was with the gang. He only needed to be wary from time to time. But now, his wariness has skyrocketed when he finally became a demon slayer. Once he had made sure the demon had fully disintegrated, he turns on his heel and proceeds to sprint back into town and await Okubio for his next mission. And within a few minutes later, he slowly was nearing a house, or rather, a manor outside of town, and was within the forest, shrouded by dozens of trees and the bright moon tonight. There was no light from what he could see from afar. Either the place is abandoned, asleep, or no one was home. He was getting curious as to why a manor was built in the middle of the forest when all of a sudden, the air became deadly overwhelming. Hanagaki halted so quickly due to fear. The air was already so thick and overwhelming, even from the distance of the manor, it reached him this far. Cautions and alert levels were ringing like loud school bells and earthquake horns inside his head, telling him to run. 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 His instinct wouldn't stop telling him that, but instead of running, he steeled himself to hide behind a tree and observe a little from afar. What could possibly be inside that house that it had me shaking this greatly even from such distance? He wonders inside his mind, throwing caution in the air as he waited for whatever to happen to the house and bring him answers. And it did. A man was visibly exiting the house, and thanks to the bright shine of the moon, he somehow could make sense that the man was covered in blood. he slowly took out his Nichiren blade, ready to attack if the said person was a demon. From afar and from his hiding spot, he could figure the man was wearing a white hat, a fedora hat, a black vest over a white shirt, and white pants as he exits the manor drenched in crimson. And just as the demon exits the manor, his presence quickly disappeared into thin air. Startled, he still takes a stance in case he might appear anywhere around him, but a few minutes later, none came and Hanagaki proceeds to get out of his hiding spot and rushes towards the manor to see if anyone at least survived. He arrived at the front door in mere seconds. Still wary, he proceeded to enter the manor with caution. The interior of the manor resembles that of a Western style with a hint of Japanese, indicating this house belonged to someone who's in the acquaintance of a Western foreigner. He continues to enter the place cautiously. He passes the living room, which shook him to see splatters of blood lined across walls. Furniture was thrown about, and such, and the bodies that were left inside were either missing a few limbs or just left bleeding to death or lifeless. He inspected them one by one, despite the smell of death and blood tingling and hurting his nose. If Tanjiro was here, he would have fainted from the smell alone, Hanagaki commented in his thoughts as he inspects everything with a hand covering his nose and mouth. Once he had inspected everyone, he proceeded to explore more to see any possible survivors, but each and every room was lined with either body parts scattered about, lifeless bodies, or such, and the people who he found dead or dismembered seemed to adorn a certain outfit similar to that of a Western maid or butler. I guess these people work here then, Hanagaki concludes. He was about to finish his rounds when all of a sudden, a loud thud was heard from above the manor. Startled and alarmed, Hanagaki unsheathes his blade and proceeded to head further upstairs with caution. As he reached the room above, a single door leading to a room was in view. Hanagaki can only conclude it to be some sort of attic. He approached the worn-down and old-aged wooden door with caution, unlatching the lock and proceeding inside. He swung the door in slow, wary motion, only to find a little girl, struggling to get up, shaking, and lying on the floor face down. "Hey, are you okay?" Instinct kicking in, he approached the child swiftly to aid her with whatever she is experiencing, only noticing now that she had a few blood splatters around her, and she was the only one in this room, reserved with only a small window looking down the front entrance. But he didn't focus on that much, as he needed to help the poor child as quickly as possible. "Hey, it's okay, you're safe now. Are you hurt anywhere?" He inspected each and every side of the child to see any possible injuries. Low growls and snarls were heard, and when Hanagaki was starting to get curiously suspicious, he was too late. The girl raised her head in an aggressive manner, followed with growling and an angered expression, and swung her left arm at him, trying to claw at him. Hanagaki was a little too late to react, and the girl had begun pouncing on him, trying to harm him, not once letting up on her feral state of attacks. Hanagaki was so startled that he didn't realize when the girl kept pouncing and swiping a scratch at him. She had knocked his Nichiren blade off his hand and Hanagaki was unarmed. "Shit!" he cursed internally as he kept dodging the child's attacks. But the room was too cramped to try and avoid her attacks, so when Hanagaki had landed on the spot near the available window of the attic, the girl had pounced on him once more, pushing them both out of the window with a crash. They ended up tumbling down, hitting the hard-tiled roof, down to the open courtyard of the manor. Once they landed in a painful thud, Hanagaki immediately grabbed the demonized child's arms to at least try and prevent her from scratching him again. They were now in a struggling position, and even when the child just got recently turned into a demon, she was giving Hanagaki trouble to push her back as her strength seems to be increasing each passing second. Adding to her feral state, it was quite a wrestle. "I gotta think of something, or else she might eat me." He tries to think of an idea, looking all around him to find something to push the child back. Since his Nichiren blade was still stuck on top of the attic, he had to think quick, as the demon child's strength was increasing rapidly now. When he began shifting slightly, he felt an uncomfortable bump on his other pocket. When he tried to struggle in the opposite direction of the bump, he registered in his mind what the other item was in the pocket. Wait, this could work, he beamed in his thoughts. He shifts slightly as he tries to measure a good distance to push the demon girl off him, enough time to grab the item inside his pocket and shove it at her. He turns to his right to see the other side of the open courtyard was filled with gardening materials and wide space, enough to push the child and gain some lenient time to proceed with his plan. And with that, he pushes the girl with all his might, and the girl came crashing down several clay pots, creating multiple crashes on the brittle pots, and a few rakes and shovels clanging unto each other. Hanagaki immediately rummaged in his left pocket for the item and took out wisteria flowers from the small pouch bag. Wisteria flowers are poison to these demons, so if he timed it right when the girl snarls at him, he'll shove the flowers down her throat and let her be poisoned. It was cruel and vicious to the child, but he has no choice. Now that the child is a demon, he has no choice but to kill her, even if it meant poisoning her to death. He grabs a rough handful since any large amount of wisteria can lethally kill a demon. The demon child slowly gets up from the crash. Its wounds were slowly healing, but it disregards them and snarls at Hanagaki, who continues to pounce on him in her feral state. So when she had her fangs ready to bite at him, Hanagaki gathered some breathing techniques to travel his legs and jumped at her at a quick speed and shoved the flowers down her throat in a swift manner, fast enough that his hand wouldn't be caught within her mouth and fangs. He landed right behind her, and he could hear her choke on the flowers and gurgle slightly at them. It pained him to hear them, so he didn't look behind him to see the process. Only a few seconds passed, and the snarls, chokes, and gurgles faded quickly. He thought the amount was a little small, so the process should have ended a little longer. But since the flowers are lethal to them, did it really kill her that quick? He slowly turns his head at the demon, expecting a deformed and poisoned demon, but was instead left shocked at the sight of what was in front of him. No way. In disbelief, the little girl was munching eagerly at the flowers, and even though it was creating several purple blotches on her skin and quickly disappearing, she was happily munching on the flowers, as if it doesn't affect her one bit. What's more, the demon's feral state had died so quickly the moment he had fed her the flowers. This is unbelievable, he spoke to himself, as he warily approached her. She reminded him of an animal being dormant once fed, and would attack again if bothered during its meal. Thank Animal Geographic for that. But once she had finished her meal, Hanagaki immediately took a stance, ready to defend her if she attacked once again, but it never came. Instead, she looked at him with woeful eyes, like a lost puppy. He now only registered the form the demon girl had taken. Her hair was as dark as pitch night, and it was glimmering with specks of small dust like stars in the night sky, and above her head had sprouted some sort of ears similar to that of a fox. Her hands slowly transitioned to a much darker color of black, from her hands to her forearms. Her eyes were as black as tar, with bright mint green pupils dilating at the sight of him. And from what he could see in front of him, was a tail swinging softly and slowly behind her. She was adorning a shrine maiden outfit, but it was a slightly tattered and beat-up outfit with a few shreds and tears. Is she? He wonders at the possibility. She isn't attacking her once she has fed the flowers, so in check. He grabbed a sharp piece of the broken clay pot, sliced his forehand, and let it bleed a little before raising it in front of her, expecting her to try and bite and react. But lo and behold, he was disappointed by the result, but surprised instead as she only tilted her head at the sight of his bleeding hand, like the sight of his bleeding hand was nothing to her. Wow, was his only response, as he dug into his other pocket for the bandage he kept around with him out and wrapped his bleeding hand. So, you're now a good demon now too, huh? He chuckles at the thought. To think, not only are there one, not two nor three good demons. He slowly approached the Fox Miko girl and patted her head with the bandaged hand soothingly and fondly, but 4 good demons, color me impressed kid, he smiles softly. and the demon watches him with a familiar shine in her eyes. She immediately grabbed his left hand and nuzzled her hand against it, not long before exclaiming, "Onii-chan," baffled as to what he was being called as he flushes a small pink blush at the terminology. Kid, I don't think I'm your brother." He tries to deny it, but the demon girl only kept rubbing her cheeks against his hand and switched immediately to latching to his arm and kept nuzzling. "Nii-chan, Nii-chan, Nii-chan," she kept repeating like a mantra. With no choice, he accepts the terminology and just proceeds to pet her head affectionately. Well, at least he has someone to accompany him aside from Okobyo. "What's your name, little lady?" he asks, letting up his petting and looking at her curiously, which only made the girl copy him, clearly indicating she doesn't know, or maybe she doesn't remember. Ah, right, demons tend to forget their past memories once they are turned. He looks back at the manor and observes, "Maybe I'll just find some information inside," he concludes, which made the demon girl clutch his arm a little longer. He sighs in defeat. He might as well bury the people inside and give them a proper burial and departure, while searching for any information regarding the demon child, and might as well retrieve his Nichiren blade from the attic. He turns to the demon child and went in front of her, knelt down, and looked at her with a soft but stern look. "Hey, do you mind waiting for me out here? I'll be quick. I just need to bury the people inside your home and find my sword. Is that okay?" he asks. With a response of a cute nod, the demon girl then went to the side and sat there all childlike. Her legs lay straight in front of her, like how a doll would be placed on a shelf. "Thanks." He gets up from his kneeling position and went back in. A good 30 or 50 minutes was spent burying the corpses in the courtyard, searching for information regarding the child, and retrieving his sword back. He comes out onto the entrance front courtyard with a small frown on his face. He recalls the moment he saw the demon exiting the manor covered in blood. If the demon who came here to massacre the place and left only the girl turning into a demon, then that could only mean... He turns his attention back to the girl, who was kicking her legs against the ground playfully and childlike. That demon was the Demon King himself, Muzan, he concludes. Only that bastard could transform a human into a demon. Enraged at the fact the bastard turned a child so young into a demon, didn't realize the scowl on his face growing deeper that it concerned the demon girl as she approached him worryingly. She tugs at his haori, which caught his attention once more. "Upset?" she asks, her tilting with a worried and concerned expression. Realizing what she meant, he quickly smiles and pats her head. "I'm okay, sorry for worrying you." He ruffles his head, which earned small giggles from the girl. "Oh, I also just found out your name." He takes out his hand for her to hold, to which he happily took with a sweet smile as they left the manor together, turning to the forest and leaving the place behind. When he was inside the manor, he found a room, similar to that of a study, and at the end of the room was a small wooden desk, and inside it was a few papers, but one paper contained information he needed. A birth certificate. Gender, female, age 10. In her middle school years, her family has been a tradition since their first generation, services to shrines and holy places, like churches and the like, and their family are also acquainted with Westerners. They've interacted with a few, therefore the reason for the interior design of the manor. Information on what, who, or where her parents are, her so-called brother, or how she lived inside the manor was still unknown to him, but one piece of information was critically needed for him. "Nice to meet you, Mizuki Ichigo." The two proceed to leave the manor together. And a new companion has arrived. "You want me to make in a shape of a box?" Amid the afternoon, Hanagaki had searched the nearest nearby town he can find to create a special item for himself. Not just for himself, but a certain young female demon. "Yes, I wanted to ask if you can create a box that I can use like a bag," Hanagaki requests. Currently, he's at a woodshop in a local town, which he found by luck when he first came in last night. Since it was already bright out, Hanagaki had no other choice but to leave Mizuki in an inn he checked in last night for a few days, so right as he's speaking to the shop owner of the woodshop, Mizuki is currently holed up in the room he checked in at the inn, doing God's know what. Of course, he closed the curtain and all too, just in case the sunlight hits her and potentially burns her to death. He prays she's not too naughty in poking around the place, enough to accidentally open the curtained window and burn herself. Well, I'm sure I can make it, but the woodshop owner ponders with his fingers rubbing his stumble, assessing the request. You gonna have to give some details about the design. Boy, it's not gonna be easy if I don't know what the actual measurements and design you need it for, he points out. Hanagaki nods and began rummaging in his pocket for a medium-sized paper that was folded into a small piece to fit inside his pocket and handed to the shop owner. Here you go, he hands the folded paper to the man, and he began unfolding it to read its contents. I got the measurements ready right here. An acquaintance of mine already created the wooden box bag I wanted to be created, and I requested how he made the box from him, and here it is. The shop owner's eyes began scanning the written contents. Slowly as he read what is written, his eyes widen before smiling in glee. Well now, this is one hell of detailed instructions. He crosses on arm and grins back to Hanagaki. Give me a few days, I'll have this finished in a snap. He reassures with a bright smile. Thank you very much. I hope to see the wonderful results, sir. And Hanagaki took off, returning to the inn to check on Mizuki before she does anything unnecessary. Once he had returned, he came across some of the workers of the inn, like receptionists and other employees. There were also some customers checking in as well. Hanagaki just passes by the receptionists and smiled back instead, retreating to his room. He began searching for his room keys and unlocks the door to reveal the room empty. Huh, Mizuki-chan? He turns to all the sides for signs of Mizuki. But sadly, there's not a single speck of her. Worried for the most possible explanation, he began investigating the room more thoroughly. Did she burn from the sun? No, that's not possible. He turns his attention to the window. When he neared it, he opened it slightly to reveal a small amount of light. If she did burn, her clothes should remain near the window, and her residue dust should be evident on the curtain, and yet there is none. He inspects the curtain for any dust residues, but find it clean and devoid of any evidence of her death. If she didn't burn, then did she leave? He turns his attention back to the door, which was still left open, and heads towards it to inspect it. But if she did, the receptionists could have told me she left her room or something when I came back, he ponders, and since the door is clear of any evidence of her leaving or escaping, he deducts her from possibly leaving. Then, that means she could still be in this room. He turns his attention back to the bare room, devoid of any presence except his. He closes the door before turning his full attention back to the room. Mizuki-chan, are you in here? He calls out once more. If you are, please reveal yourself and stop hiding. I want to talk to you for a minute. A few seconds of silence are heard before the corner shadow of the room seems to darken even more, and all of a sudden, a large mist of shadow emanates from the corner, and what comes out of the mist disperses to reveal Mizuki, hiding within the shadow. Hanagaki widens in surprise at the sudden sight. Finding Mizuki to suddenly emerge from the corner shadow means that the girl has evolved enough to wield supernatural powers now. Oni-chan, she calls out, running towards him and hugging him adorably and affectionately, her tail wagging happily at the sight of him, like a cat snuggling to its owner once it returns home. Wait, why is he thinking that type of metaphor? You surprised me there, Mizuki-chan. He kneels to her level. To think you can use your powers now. He draws long and wonders. Mizuki only watches him with a sweet smile while her tail wags behind her. Could this be her blood demon art? Or her transfiguration, he wonders. He notices her appearance had slightly changed. Her height has doubled a few inches, and her arms and legs had changed slightly more claw-like now. Her eyes had become even brighter. her ears more pointed, and her presence had become even more great than before. Demons tend to become much stronger each day depending on the number of humans they eat. But Mizuki hasn't eaten a single human at all. So how does she even earn power this fast, he wonders. He turns to observe her further, but he was so distracted that he didn't realize Mizuki was waving her arms around aimlessly at him, trying to catch his attention. Oh, what's wrong, Mizuki-chan? He snaps out of his thoughts and looks back at Mizuki more properly. When he turns his attention more properly, she can see her hands gesturing her mouth, opening wide and pointing at it several times. Are you hungry? She replies with a vigorous nod. But what do you want? Do you want human flesh or something? He tilts his head in wariness and wonder, but was replied with a rapid shake of his head. Then what do you want, Mizuki-chan? He asks once more. Flowers, she repeats joyously. Hanagaki wonders what she meant for a second, before coming to realize what the flower she spoke of really meant. You want some wisteria flowers? Sure, I did make her eat the wisteria flowers to try at least poison her since I was unarmed, and she practically survived the lethal dose. But why would she want that as her food source? He questions within him, bewildered on what to do. But since he has no choice, he takes out the wisteria flower pouch from within his pocket and hands it over to Mizuki, who lovably snatched the pouch from his hand and began devouring the flowers with a proud and cheerful smile with each bite, her tail wagging heartily at each munch. You really like them, don't you? He laughably jokes as he watches her eat the flowers, and her skin changes to purple in a millisecond before turning back to her normal-colored skin. But as he watches her, he realizes her presence seems to be increasing little by little now. Wait, don't tell me. He concludes that maybe because of the wisteria flowers she eats, her powers have been increasing little by little depending on the amount she eats. Well, this is unbelievable. He crosses his arms in a cross, staring at her with a tired and fond look. If Nezuko-chan's energy resource is that of sleeping, I shouldn't be surprised that Mizuki-chan's source is that of the wisteria flowers that are considered poisonous to demons, he confirms as he sits down while watching her eat eagerly. But as he does, he concludes having Mizuki around. I'm sure the Demon Slayer Corps will hear about this soon, about me and Tanjiro having accompanying demons in our missions. When it is considered against the Corps rules, he thinks the consequences over. If it ever comes to that, we might have to pay the price greatly, he concludes. A few days later, the box was finally finished and Mizuki can now accompany Hanagaki in his travels during the day by staying inside the box until night comes for her to come out. When the day her box was finished, Okobio came in with his mission ready, and he set out to Shikoku, where rumors of multiple disappearances, mass genocides, and paralyzed deaths all in the same night. It was so odd that it happens all at once and that not a single piece of evidence of the culprit is left behind at every crime scene. It was already horrifying as it is that the culprit who committed these crimes happened to do it at the same 10 crimes in one night. So before dark, Hanagaki went out to investigate. He questions some citizens for answers if they at least have an insight of who or what it could be. Some citizens were too afraid to even tell a tale or word of it, claiming it to be the work of a demon, which is true, but they didn't need to know that. Some claim it to be some sort of cult practice. There were multiple rumors of what it could be, and neither led to any idea of what the being could do, but there were some who were more observant and logical than the rest. Some say they hear the flapping of wings before the crimes occur, and some would happen to find the crimes left with either their windows open, and strange smells of moth dust can be smelled. This gives Hanagaki the idea that the demon could be in a form of an airborne figure. With wings, it can easily fly away and escape the crime scenes easily. But the question is what it could do, or how is it able to do these crimes multiple times in one night, is the question. And only the night can answer that. It was slowly becoming nighttime, 6 p.m. to be precise, and since it was already dark out, Hanagaki decided to let Mizuki-chan out of the box and stretch out for a little while. Observing from high above a rooftop building, he watches closely for any signs of the demon while laying low and waiting for it to arrive. On the other hand, Mizuki was busy munching on more wisteria flowers, to which he requested a few more pouches from the core for. Luckily enough, they didn't suspect as much. While he waited and observed from above, he recalls the message he received from both Tanjiro and Master regarding Mizuki. Dear Hanagaki, in regards of a new demon capable of resisting human blood and flesh is still surprising. I suppose that should explain why you requested the monstruments of Nezuko's box, and I can only advise you to be careful. The core could very well send you to trial or commit seppuku, and I can only do so much as my previous position as former Hashira and trainer if the day ever come. But the female demon you accompany, she is very much like Nezuko indeed, but instead of regaining energy with sleep, she eats wisteria flowers, which is a shock, as it is poisonous and lethal to them. If what you say is true, then the possible number of demons capable of cutting ties with the Demon King is bound to increase. Make sure to keep eye on her. I have a feeling you and the young female demon are bound to go through leaps and bounds, just like Tanjiro and Nezuko. I wish you and the young Mizuki a bright future in your journey. From Yurakadaki. And there was from Tanjiro. Dear Takemichi-kun, when you sent that letter about another demon like Nezuko, I was really ecstatic to learn of such development, because not only are there 3 good demons, there are 4 of them now, and I've also informed Tamio-san and Yushiro-san regarding Mizuki-chan. They said they'd like to request you if you can give them a sample of Mizuki-chan's blood, in order to see further regarding her changes if we ever cross paths. The decision is yours, Takemichi-kun, so don't feel too forced into doing so. I do hope we see each other soon. I'm sure Nezuko would love to be able to interact with another demon like her. Hope to hear from you soon. From Tanjiro Kamado. The reply of accepting her relieves him some weight off his shoulder, even though he knows they'll acknowledge her either way. He glances back at Mizuki, who seems to have finished eating her portion of wisteria flowers now. Her hair is glowing like twinkling stars under the night sky, and her hollowed black eyes with glowing mint green eyes glow beautifully like gemstones as she watches him. He smiles fondly at her, and on instinct, affectionately pets her head, lovingly looking at Mizuki like how an older brother would. I wonder if this is what Tanjiro feels like. Hanagaki continues to stroke her head until Mizuki started pointing behind him. Butterfly, butterfly, she repeats joyously, pointing behind him. Confused as to what she meant, he looks behind him again, and in a faraway distance, he spots a silhouette of the demon from afar. From the figure alone, it would seem it has wings indeed, largely ominous from behind the shadows of buildings and the like. But before he could pounce in, the demon suddenly shuddered for a few seconds, before suddenly splitting into several versions of itself. But each time it split, they grew smaller in size. So that's how, Hanagaki muttered to himself. The sudden splitting of itself would answer how it could commit so many crimes in one night. It can split itself into numerous numbers. Like I'll let you do what you want. And with quick haste, Hanagaki immediately jumped from one rooftop building to another. Followed behind him is Mizuki, easily catching up to Hanagaki's pace to counter the demon. Once he was near, Hanagaki readies his stance. Mizuki, be sure to keep a safe distance, he warns her beforehand, in hopes his attacks won't accidentally reach her and harms her. Hikari no Kakyu, Ikai no Kata. Blinding strike. With its bright light, the attack blinded the demon for a second before it realized the attack hit it. With the blow, the demon screeched in pain, similar to that of the cries of a pained and injured bat, higher pitch than normal. Grog, who dares, it shrieks in anger. Its regeneration was a tad slower than the mirror demon siblings, but its strength doubles that of the 2 siblings. Hanagaki lands just below the flying demon, whose wings were etched with odd markings. The shape of it were similar to that of a moth, but larger, so I guess the demon could be considered a Mothman demon. I am with Demon Slayer Corps, Hanagaki Takemichi, and here to behead you. Hanagaki declares his sword at ready to strike. Mizuki, on the other hand, remains behind him, confused as to what to do. TCH, a demon slayer, just what I need. It scoffs in anger, but before it could turn away, it snapped its fingers and several of its clones appeared once more in front of him, 3 to be exact. Deal with him, it orders, and with no second to spare, the 3 lunge at Hanagaki, and the main demon flees from the scene. NGH, not good, can't stay here for long or it'll escape. Hanagaki tries to defeat the 3 clones, but with its quick agility and speed, it is hard to even get a strike at its neck. Each slice he does on its limbs would regenerate slowly on its own, so the clones needed to be headed like an actual demon to defeat it. Hanagaki would grow tired soon if doesn't behead it soon, and seeing him struggle, Mizuki was quick to adjust and leaped into the fight as well. With her charred black arms, it suddenly grew in length, forming into the shape of a tentacle, and rapidly grabbing the flying moth clones and trapping them in one place. "Got 'em!" she screamed, and to Hanagaki's surprise, the clones were having a hard time getting out of Mizuki's iron grip black tentacles. "So she's a lot stronger than these things?" he concluded. His shock dispersed in seconds, and immediately, he beheads the 3 clones that follow their head rolling onto the ground and dispersing into dust. Mizuki watches one head disappear into dust when it rolled near her feet. Somehow the fact the head disappeared underneath her sort of registered deeply within her, embedding deep within her memory, something she must remember. Hanagaki felt rather proud of Mizuki. He wonders if this is what Tanjiro felt when Nezuko also helped him in some of his missions. He quickly went toward Mizuki and pats her head dotingly. "Thanks for that, Mizuki-chan. You were a great help there." He compliments her earnestly, with a bright and fond smile. The smile of the sun shone on them despite the darkness and the moon illuminating the night. Seeing such happiness aimed at her, Mizuki felt extremely glad at that appreciation and an adorable smile back in return. "But time's a-wasting. We gotta catch up to that demon," Hanagaki repeats to himself and quickly turned towards the direction the demon is headed and started chasing alongside Mizuki. A few minutes later, Hanagaki finds himself in the forest again. Tailing behind the moth demon, he sees it enter a small, dark cave. Hiding from the fight? No way. With a conclusion in mind, he readies a stance. Hikari no Kakyu, San no Kata. Heaven piercers. Several bright strikes were aimed at the front. The strikes hurled towards the demon, but since the demon sensed it beforehand, quickly ducked and evaded the strikes. "Ha! You missed," it laughs at the failed attempt. "Did I, though?" he mocks openly, stupefied as to what the demon slayer meant. It didn't take long before the strikes were aimed at the entrance of the cave, and with several strikes aimed at the entrance, it brought destruction to its upper parts and collapsed several debris, blocking the entrance of the cave. TCHYU, frustrated, it flaps its wings hard and flew a bit higher. While it flew, its wings suddenly began emitting an odd purple smoke, and the demon began shrinking in size too. Crap! On all sides, the demon had conjured 6 clones of itself that formed after the smoke was fully emitted. Hanagaki alongside Mizuki was cornered on all sides, but before Hanagaki could do his next move, the demon alongside its clones began inhaling a huge amount of air. Blood demon art. Torpify mist. Exhaling a huge amount of purple gas at quick speed from their mouths, Hanagaki had no chance or time to evade and was caught in the attack. Shit, I forgot it could paralyze his opponents. He forgot that one of its capabilities was to paralyze, assuming from the amount of paralyzed victims it had. "Niai-chan," Mizuki called out with a troubled expression, rushing to his aid and shaking him softly to get up. Mizuki, get out of here," he tells her, worried for her sake. He urges for her to quickly leave before she gets hurt. Unable to move due to paralyzation, his expression can only show a pained and desperate expression. What a pity, and you seem like a worthy opponent, that demon taunts as its clones close in from all sides. Startled, Mizuki wraps her arms around Hanagaki protectingly, growling at the same time. Huh, who's this waste of space? One of the clones spoke in an irked tone, that the demon roughly grabbed a handful of Mizuki's clothes and threw her backward, hitting against a tree and bending over slightly diagonal due to the impact. Mizuki-chan, Hanagaki could only call out in distress. He tries to break free from the state he is in, but seconds later, the clones began beating Hanagaki up in his paralyzed form, subjecting him to the amount of pain directed at him. This is what you foolish human get for getting into our business. One of the demon's clones, or maybe itself, spoke in a mock tone, beating him up with either its leg or slicing him up with its claws. Hanagaki can only subject himself to this pain and wince at every single one of it. The demon was torturing him with this violence before he even does kill him, so it makes it more satisfying for itself and agonizing for him. Mizuki then slowly blinks open from the amount of force being applied to her when she was thrown against the three, only to see Hanagaki nearly bleeding to death by the number of punches, kicks and etc. from the demon. Her eyes dilates in surprise, her emotions clenches hardly into her chest. She felt a familiar feeling inside. The scene in front of her leaves her stupefied, immobile, and rooted to the ground. Something of this scene, Hanagaki beat to the ground. A flashback of her lost memories flashes before her. Go back to your room. Mai-chan, Niai-chan will handle this, okay? A boy laying on the ground spoke in a hoarse voice while being kicked by an old man with a cane. Several people were in the room too. One woman, 3 servants cowering in fear, covering their mouths at the gruesome sights. Mizuki was glued to the door left slightly ajar, tears rolling down her cheeks at the sight of her beloved brother. His beautiful emerald green eyes glimmered due to the pain tears, and there she was, unable to move and help him due to the fear coursing through her. Niai-chan, she could only call out to him in a plea, as she watches him be beaten black and blue by their grandfather, screaming profanities at him that she doesn't understand. She wanted to move, she wanted to stop him from her hurting her brother. She wanted to scream, anything for the painful scene, emotions and fear coursing her, and of course, she wanted to scream, not just because of her fear, but in anger. Anger for how they treated those who she loved brutally and beat them twofold of the pain they caused her and her loved ones. Mizuki, recalling such emotions and memories, growls in roaring fury. Her charred black arms grow in length, her height doubled from what her current form was. Her eyes of mint green color dilate and her pupils change to slits, and a vein was popping on her forehead. Don't, she mutters softly, and slowly but surely gets up from her crouched form, and in a disoriented stance, she stands deathly still. Touch, her arms grew even longer, with several more tentacles that count the same as her fingers. It thumps to the ground, and the demon catches sight of what's happening behind him. With her face covered by the shadow of the night, her tense form and growing tentacle arm, she whips her head up with a feral look on her face. Her eyes almost seem to glow beneath the shadows. Niai-chan. And with sonic speed, her tentacle arms made their way to aim at the demon's chest, neck, and every part of the clones. 3 of the clones were stabbed in the chest by the branched-out tentacles and twisted like a serpent-like snake and choked on their neck. 2 of the demons were held captured by the branched tentacles on all of its limbs. The other demon was clipped off its wings, being held tight like a piece of crumpled paper, in screeches in pain of its wings being held in iron grip. She watches them with bloodlust glowing in her eyes before throwing them aside like how it did to her with such strong force that it knocked several trees, and some were glued to the ground. What the hell? The main demon could only float in shock at the scene going on. Nobody told him demons would join forces with humans, much less a demon slayer of all people. And what's with that strength? It was twice his own. But before he could deal with her, she was nowhere near her line of sight no longer. Where did fuck the brat go? In turns his head side to see for any signs of her. but he only managed to sense her bloodlust before her tentacles' arms grabbed hold of his legs and arms. Her tentacles then began slithering all around him, branching from medium-sized ones, and creepingly slowly it turned into small roots, embedding themselves into the skin of the demon, like veins covering his entire being. Hanagaki could only see slightly what was going on, and seeing Mizuki like this leaves him shocked in place, even if the paralyzing effects were slowly coming off. "Unhand me, the demon struggles to break free, but was unable to even get out due to the strong grip. "Don't touch Niai-chan," she spoke in a hollow and deathly tone that frightened both occupants. Suddenly, the demon felt a burning pain within him, like something slowly made its way inside of him, and it was now burning from within his core. He screeched in agony at the painful feeling. His skin was having splotch marks of purple, slowly covering him with it, his skin falling off like dew or burning from the purple splotches. "Greg!" It could only screech in pain, as wisteria poison coursed in every vein and blood vessel within him before it limped immobile from her grip and dies in place. Once the feeling of the demon no longer moves, Mizuki unleashes the demon as it thumps to the ground with its skin melting slowly. It was dead, but it will remain, not until the sun comes up and burns it away due to sunlight. Hanagaki was still shocked in place, unable to comprehend what had just occurred, even as to ignoring the bleeding forehead, broken arms, and maybe a few ribs. That was terrifying, he admits. Even if he knew Mizuki was on their side, he still couldn't believe what Mizuki is capable of doing. Her having her transfigured body parts do something of that caliber. Her strength was far greater than he expected, and the wisteria poison that she must have concocted within her due to the number of wisteria flowers she ate. It was really terrifyingly fascinating. "No, now is not the time to be in awe," he snaps out of his thoughts. "The missions are over, and the sun is about to rise soon, so I better hide inside the box quickly," he concludes. He rushes toward her, but since he couldn't get the feeling of dread and fear from what happened, he taps on her shoulder instead to gather her attention. Mizuki blinks out of her hazy eyes of anger and looks at Hanagaki, confused, like a lost puppy. "Gosh, that's enough to make forget about what occurred seconds ago." He clenches his eyes due to the cuteness before coughing it away. "Anyway, Mizuki-chan, you did great on helping me there." He pats her head to try at least ease her. Mizuki only responded with an adorable grin, accompanied by her tail wagging joyfully at the praise. "The sun's coming up soon, so it's best you hide inside again for now," he advises as he takes the box off of his shoulder and opens it. Mizuki didn't think twice and entered the box, situated herself comfortably before Hanagaki closed it again and brought it to his shoulders. "Ack!" He flinches in pain. The amount of beating the demon did on him did a number on him, so he definitely needs medical help soon. He ignores the pain and continued on his journey as the sky slowly changes hue color. He looks up to watch the changing sky and sighs. What am I going to tell Tanjiro and Master now? He honestly doesn't know if he should feel shocked, surprised, or frightened. He was given a task by Okubio after his encounter with the moth demon that he has slain with Mizuki-chan. After receiving such mission, Mizuki has been so eagerly helping him on his missions now. Once, he and Mizuki had to chase a demon, and all Mizuki did was lengthen her arm into the black tentacle she once did to the previous demon and captured it. And the chase was done in mere seconds, and all Hanagaki had to slice his head off. Another mission they had was that the demon had a blood demon art to morph into objects, and it was hard to pinpoint which part of the object was its head, so it was chased as well as a hide and sought. It then led to a place devoid of light. It was hard to pinpoint the demon's location. Then, all of a sudden, Mizuki sunk her arms into the shadows and immediately intercepted and captured the demon hiding in the room's shadows filled with objects upon objects. The mission was also over in an instant. He had taken at least 13 missions in one night, more so than he ever takes, which was at least 5 to 7 missions a night before he takes a rest. and currently right now. Ag, what the hell is this? In an abandoned factory was another mission he was sent to, and the demon he was searching for was already apprehended, and using apprehended, he means Mizuki had captured it and was dangling over a large pipe whilst wrapped in her long black tentacle arm, giggling at his expense. Another thing he found out during his missions is that every time Mizuki would capture the demons he was sent to slay, she would always dangle them like raw meat and swing them playfully, like a sadist watching them in their last moments before being sent into to be slaughtered. Hanagaki sighs at the scene before him. Yet again, Mizuki had already gotten the demon before him and was now only waiting for him to behead him as he dangles from above. Much as he was watching at the demon's expense, he needs to finish his job first before he could go and rest for the day. It was slowly dimming to nighttime, and the demon had hidden within the factory, to which he found out after a few hours of investigating. Slain him for the day. The head was then beheaded from the top, where he was dangling upon and rolled towards the ground before dispersing into dust right after. Mizuki then untangled her arm from the large pipe and hurriedly went towards where Hanagaki was. Once she got to him, she was looking at him expectantly, like she was waiting for praise from him. Of course, he does appreciate her assistance, but every time she gets there before him with a really precarious situation really gets him on edge that one day, Mizuki will get herself hurt badly even before he can get there to help her. Well, as of now, none of that has happened yet, so all he can do is just appreciate her help and do better next time on assisting. He takes a closer step towards her and pats her head affectionately. Mizuki's tail wagged happily at the pats on her head she received every time she assisted on her older brother's mission. Seeing him smile at her and pat her always gets her giddy. Thanks, Mizuki-chan. He can only thank her for assistance, but for this evening, he has to tell her, so he gets down on one knee to be at the same height as her. But you know, it worries me a lot that you always throw yourself so carelessly into danger like that, he said in the most sorrowful tone he could muster so Mizuki could understand. And it did work. Her tail wagged slowly now and her expression changed to that of a confused look. Worry? Danger? Me? She repeats the ones she hears most accurate for her, and Hanagaki nods. Yes, I'm worried, and even if you are strong and powerful, you gotta rely on me too, okay? I don't want you recklessly putting yourself into danger, or it will. He pauses, trying to find a word that will appeal to her the most. His eyes brightened up on the word, sad. It will make me sad that you put yourself into danger. He tries to explain, and hearing the word sad made Mizuki frantic. Seeing her older brother's expression turn moody and sour made a gut-wrenching feeling in her that she didn't like. Older brother sad? Small tears welled up in her eyes at the word, and Hanagaki tries to muster a pitiful look at her and nodded, yes, it will make me sad, and he gets up from his kneeling position and looked down at her with his still pitiful look. So if you ever find a demon as well, make sure not to chase them immediately for me, but tell me as well, okay? He asks, to which she nods furiously at that and immediately hugs her, burying her face in his chest, which caught him off guard before Mizuki spoke again. No, sad, she sniffs, will call, help, demon, found, next time. She muster word by word due to her lack of vocabulary after her demonization, and just from that, Hanagaki smiled contently and hugged her back. Thank you, Mizuki-chan, he smiled finally at her, and seeing that finally made Mizuki-chan stop crying, and was left with leftover tears streaming on her. Seeing this, Hanagaki immediately went to wipe them off her face. Now, let's go find someplace to rest, shall we? Niai-chan is sort of tired for today. He appeals his exhaustion at her, but still takes out the box from behind him and opens it for her. Hop on in. You'll burn from the sunlight still being slightly out. I'll let you out once it's dark, he assures her. But the assurance wasn't necessary as Mizuki quickly goes inside and tucks herself comfortably inside, who giggles at her position of sitting down. Hanagaki could only smile fondly at her before closing the box. He puts the box back on his shoulders once more and begins traveling. Despite a few bones broken within him and a few cuts and bruises left untreated properly, he needs to find a place to stay for the night and call for first aid soon. An hour or two has passed, and Hanagaki has reached a part of the countryside. Fields upon fields of rice and other crops. He was nearing the mountains and being directed by Okubio to an inn that was marked with a wisteria crest, and apparently it was a few hours away, so Hanagaki had to muster all his leftover stamina and strength to get there. From the horizon, he sees the sun slowly setting to its orange hue, and the night was coming soon again. While he's on his way to the inn, he tries to imagine what Tanjiro is doing. He did agree to this Tamio and Yushiro person request regarding Mizuki, but he has yet to meet them or meet Tanjiro again because their missions never tend to cross paths. He does imagine what it would be like to have Mizuki-chan interact with Mizuko-chan, being the same demons who are not in the control of the Demon King and all. But recalling such memories of his friends makes him recall his old ones, the ones he left behind after all. While following the path blindly, he imagines what his other gang friends are doing. It has been 1/4 of the first year since he's seen them. What are they currently doing? Were they in good health? Did they encounter demons? Was the gang world as chaotic as he left it? What of the former Tommen members? Draken, has he recovered? So many things circulated in his mind that he failed to hear the blabbering noise just in front of him until he heard it much clearer and louder. "And I'm telling you, we're not going to fight, you hard-headed ass boar. What, can't you understand that?" A very annoyed voice was screeching at someone they refer to as hard-headed ass boar, and continued bickering and screaming at each other. He was left confused at the bickering noise before another voice spoke back in retaliation. Well, more like in a challenging tone. "Fight me instead then, Gajori." A rough male voice spoke this time, clearly challenging this Gajori guy, which sounded like not a real name at all, and more like a failed attempt to pronounce the guy's name. Poor him. "I'm telling you, Inosuke, I'm not gonna fight you." The boy sounded pleading, like he was begging this loud and abrasive boy named Inosuke to stop challenging him into a fight. But it seems like it didn't make the boy stop from either challenging this Gajori guy or the other person. But the fact they were arguing about the fact of fighting, the one who spoke in such a comforting tone reminded him of someone. When he heard such a tone, his ears perked up in recognition, as well as his heart pounded with excitement. Could it be? He turned his attention to the source of the voice, and from above, descending the mountain, were 3 boys and a couple of kids behind them. One was devoid of clothing in his upper torso and was bare-chested, reserved with only a fluffy fur hugging his waist and a baggy blue hakama pants, similar to his, and on his face was a boar mask. Another was a boy with bright but suiting yellow hair. He wore a yellow haori with triangle patterns and a dark yellow demon slayer uniform, and he was being carried on the back, as it seems he was injured or exhausted to descend the mountain. But it wasn't these two that caught his attention. It was the boy who was carrying the yellow-haired guy. The 3 halted at the sight of Hanagaki, and Hanagaki halted the same at the sight of a familiar face, a very familiar and well-known face. "Takemichi-kun! Tanjiro-kun!" The 2 exclaimed together, which left the other 2 occupants confused about who was the other, until Tanjiro began heading towards him, almost completely forgetting the boy with yellow hair was behind him. "Takemichi-kun, it is you. How have you been?" Tanjiro exclaims enthusiastically. 2 students of the same master and friends were finally reunited, and the 2 couldn't be any more joyful at seeing each other. "I've been well, and it seems like you've got some company, too," Hanagaki exclaimed, giving recognition to the company he was with. Tanjiro turned behind him, nearly forgetting he had some people descending the mountain with him. "Oh right, I forgot to introduce you guys." Tanjiro adjusts the yellow-haired boy from behind him and turns to the side to introduce everyone to his friend. "This is Zenitsu. We met a while ago on the road." He turns his eyes towards Zenitsu so Hanagaki would know which is which. The yellow-haired boy only bowed lowly as best as he could since he was being carried. Agatsuma Zenitsu. Nice to meet you. Then suddenly, Zenitsu's ears seems to have perked up at the sight behind Hanagaki, before going slightly pale again. Hanagaki noticed, of course, but he didn't mind it much. Well, much. And right here is Tanjiro went to introduce the boarhead next, but was interrupted by the boy instead. Hashibira Inosuke, best remember that blue eyes, he exclaims proudly as he pointed at Hanagaki. Blue eyes? Hanagaki thought in his head, confused at the nickname. But he does have blue eyes, so he doesn't get why that is his nickname. Tanjiro sighed with a smile before turning towards the other occupants. And these three here are siblings. He turns his attention towards the siblings to introduce themselves. Tanaka Kiyoshi, the eldest, the one who looked like the eldest, adorned an orange jacket, metallic green pants, and black and white rubber shoes, introduced himself. Tanaka Shoichi, the middle child, he spoke in a bit of shaky and low tone, clearly bothered about something. He adorned a blue vest jacket and white shirt with a single green stripe and black pants and shoes. Tanaka Teruko, youngest, the little girl's, adorned pigtails on her hair, that hand on her shoulders with red pearls, pink dress with white collar and red doll shoes with white socks. Tanjiro made a hum tone of recognition before turning back to Hanagaki. These three were victims of a demon incident. So me, Zenitsu, and Inosuke went in to deal with the demons and save these siblings' older brother, who was apparently kidnapped on their way home, Tanjiro explained. Hanagaki could only make an expression of pitiful shock before turning towards the siblings. Are you three all right now? He asks, bending down to reach their height level. And from what he can tell, the eldest looked like he was around in his tens, the middle was below 10 or so, and youngest looked like below the age of 8 to 6 years old. The eldest, Kiyoshi replied, "We're okay now." He tried to give his best reply, being assisted by the middle child, Shoichi, as it seems the boy was limping from one leg, maybe due to the incident a while ago. That's good to hear then. Hanagaki gave a beautiful smile, happy that the children are safe and sound now, and behind him was Tanjiro smiling as well about the safety of the siblings. Oblivious to the three siblings flushed at the beautiful expression of the two. Seeing them smile at them like that made a few butterflies flower within their gut. It wasn't unpleasant, but something about their smile felt comforting, warm, and beautiful even. Kiyoshi then attempted a fake cough. Well, we best get going home. Our parents are sure to worry by now. He excused himself and bowed deeply in gratitude towards the three demon slayers that saved them and headed their way home with the wisteria repellent they received from Tennoji, Tanjiro's crow. They watched the siblings depart for home, and once they did, they proceeded to head towards the inn together. And on their way, they spoke of their mission a few minutes ago. Mostly Tanjiro, Zenitsu, and Hanagaki did the most talking. I swear I'm going to find a weakness in you, and I'm going to bring you down. Manjiro, Inosuke declares proudly, high and mighty, to which Tanjiro only chuckles in response. Ugh, this stupid boarhead, Zenitsu groans at Inosuke's declaration. Hanagaki can't help but laugh at this comedic scene, before turning to Zenitsu by the ear. Hey, Zenitsu-kun, he calls out in a hushed tone. Zenitsu turns his attention back to Hanagaki. Yeah, what is it? He asks. Has Inosuke-kun always been like this? He asked. The ridiculously funny but determined declarations Inosuke does remind him of a certain someone. But he can't pinpoint from which of his friends or gang enemies he picked up their attitude that was eerily similar to Inosuke. Zenitsu replied with a groan again, don't know about that. He looks up and down at Hanagaki. I didn't quite catch your name. He trails off, hopefully, to hear his name from him. Hanagaki only then realizes he didn't introduce himself, so coughs slightly at the poor manners. Sorry about that. My name's Takemichi. Hanagaki Takemichi, he introduces. The name suddenly rang a bell in Zenitsu. He further squinted his eyes at him, which made the boy a little unnerved, but Zenitsu quickly replied with a recognizing tone. "Aren't you that kid who saved everyone from the final selection?" he calls him out. Hanagaki's eyes dilate at the nickname given to him, but he smiles back instead. "Yeah, that's me." Zenitsu smiles in response as well, and the two followed the pursuit of the others as they headed for the inn to rest for the night. Hanagaki also noticed when they were on their way there. He would see Zenitsu peek at the boxes behind Tanjiro and him from time to time. He had a hunch Zenitsu knows, but he wasn't sure if Tanjiro notices, so he kept quiet for now. Minutes later, and after a long time after hearing Zenitsu and Inosuke bickering at each other's throats, Tanjiro occasionally intervening to calm the two down, they finally reached an inn with a wisteria crest engraved on it. Hidden within the wood, with the bright moon out in its full sphere glory, led them here tonight for a good night's rest. The four were led by Tenauji, Tanjiro's crow, and Okubio, Hanagaki's crow. Rest time, Okubio exclaimed out loud. "Since you've sustained injuries, rest and recover." He explains it's a boisterous tone. He was held by Tanjiro in both hands, with a slightly distressed look. Okubio had landed on Hanagaki's shoulder, shaking, while Zenitsu's sparrow, Chuntaro, as Zenitsu nicknamed him, was perching on his hand. But Tanjiro told me his name was Yukogi, and that Zenitsu didn't even know his real name, but that doesn't matter for now. "Are you sure it's all right for us to rest? I mean, I did just fight a demon while injured, you know?" he worryingly asked. But all the response was odd laughter from him. Ki was Tenauji's response. Ki, Tanjiro repeated in confusion. "Let's eat this thing," Inosuke suggested as he pulled on the end tail of the crow, who flinched at the suggestion of being eaten. But before that could even happen, the door to the inn opened slightly ajar, revealing a small old lady, with her tied in a bun, and in a maroon violet kimono, grates them as she peeks out. "Yes?" Apologies for bothering you so late at night," Tanjiro replies back on behalf of everyone. Hanagaki bows instead at the sight of the elderly woman. Inosuke was neutral, and Zenitsu, who was, shaking in fear, pale in the face, while Chuntaro, perched on his head, replied in fright. "A monster, it's a monster." "Hey," Tanjiro calls out in distress at the terminology Zenitsu used. "Who the hell are you?" Inosuke grouchily spoke as he neared the elderly woman. "Inosuke-kun," Hanagaki calls out in frustration this time. "I see you're a demon hunter." The elderly woman bowed at the sight of Inosuke with grace despite her age. "You look pretty weak," Inosuke remarked. "Hey!" Tanjiro and Hanagaki yell in unison at the such crude and rude remark. But the lady didn't seem to bother and turned to the side to let them in. "Come in then," was all she said before the four of them followed in pursuit behind the elderly woman, who was fascinatingly walking faster than them. It was late at night, and they were walking through the open front garden of the inn. Because of that, Inosuke was warily looking around as he followed as well. "That old sure walks fast," Zenitsu commented in a soft shout whisper behind Tanjiro. Hanagaki, behind Zenitsu, was trying to make Inosuke behave and stop moving so much. "Here is a change of clothes," once the shoji door to a room reveals the old lady from earlier, on her knees, and presented with 4 sets of clothing changes. "And here is your meal like a while ago." 4 sets of meals were presented and laid out accordingly for them, with the old lady waiting for them in a kneeling position. "She has to be a monster, Tanjiro." "That old lady's a monster," Zenitsu exclaimed profoundly, looking over at Tanjiro at a quick glance. "She's so quick it's eerie. Don't you think so, Hanagaki? It's a monster. It's a monster, hag." Bam. Whack. Zenitsu was then knocked from behind his head with a fist and slapped by Tanjiro and Hanagaki, furious at the rude and disrespectful remark. They were presented with a plate of fried dishes, a singular bowl of side dish potatoes and carrots, a bowl of rice, and a cup of tea, neatly placed on a Yakemono Zara serving tray. Inosuke was gobbling on the plate of fried dishes, devoid of using the chopsticks, and barehandedly ate in a feral almost state, lacking manners. The three watched him with a slightly repulsed look and have not made a single dent in their food due to the sight of Inosuke's way of eating. Use your chopsticks, Zenitsu reprimanded. Not before Inosuke brazenly take a portion of fried tempura from Tanjiro's plate, quickly surprising them with the brash action. Inosuke laughs at this with his mouth full, then immediately takes another fried food from Tanjiro's plate and grins proudly at his face. So he's trying to frustrate Tanjiro, is he? Was all Hanagaki could guess from the smug look on Inosuke's face as he takes Tanjiro's food. Tanjiro could only look in a daze before generously taking his side dish and presenting it to Inosuke. If you're that hungry, you can have this too, he offered with that genuine smile of his. Inosuke's plan backfired on him, and instead, he was infuriated at the lack of good reaction. Here Tanjiro pushes the food forwards. No, was Inosuke's response to that instead. Hanagaki ate in exasperation instead, and noticed the almost constipated look on Zenitsu, glaring at Inosuke and his brash way of eating. Well, this is certainly fun, he thought to himself as he gobbled a piece of potato from his side dish. You're betting, the old lady from before spoke of in a kneeling position, like the ones from before with the clothing and food. There she is, the monster hag. Bam. Bang. And Zenitsu was met with another hit in the head and a side punch to his shoulder from Hanagaki, whilst Inosuke dived deep into the laid futon, claiming his spot immediately. First come, first served, I'm taking this one, he declares proudly as he pats the futon. That's fine, sleep wherever you want, Tanjiro replied with a sincere smile. Is that fine with you, Takemichi-kun? He glanced at Hanagaki with that question. Yeah, I'm fine with it, Hanagaki responded with the same genuine smile. Which one are you going for, Zenitsu? Tanjiro looks to the side as he asks Zenitsu. Zenitsu contemplates for a bit. While he did, Hanagaki notices the tick look on his face and was grabbing tightly onto the pillow he was laying on. Oh no, Hanagaki had a bad feeling. Ryag, Inosuke cried out and threw the pillow straight at Zenitsu's face, who groaned in pain at the impact. Hanagaki dodged just in the nick of time. He was sure it would hit him had he not dodged and ducked. But he felt sorry for Zenitsu taking the brunt of the hit. A few minutes later, the old lady arrived with a doctor who appeared at their room's front door. He bowed in respect and was met with the same bow to the floor by the four, except Inosuke. The doctor made quick haste to inspect their injuries with a stethoscope, one after the other. Yes, severe, was all he said. It was quiet finally, at last. The four had finally laid down to their designated futons and looked blankly at the ceiling. The room was still fairly lit, reserved with one square lamp next to Inosuke. Who would have thought all four of us had broken ribs, Zenitsu commented bluntly. Zenitsu 2 ribs. Tanjiro 3 ribs. Inosuke 4 ribs. Hanagaki 5 ribs and a fractured shoulder bone. Hanagaki expected as much. He had been doing a good number of missions in one day, without rest thanks to Mizuki assisting him on them. But due to that, he had sustained a huge amount of broken bones and scratches, and wounds, too. Far worse than when he was at the gang, where all it hurt was his chest and his face, but no other bones were broken back then. Inosuke then parted his bangs to reveal a huge knot glaring red on his forehead. This knot hurts more than my ribs, he commented with a hoarse tone. Hanagaki, who was lying beside Zenitsu, could only see in a glance at the knot, and gasped silently and gaped at it. He could tell it was Tanjiro's fault since he was the only one capable of hurting someone to that extent with that forehead of his. Sorry, Tanjiro responded in a regretful tone, not once looking at his side as he apologized, but was sincere enough of his fault. Hey, you'd better apologize. It really hurt, you know, Zenitsu demanded, getting beaten to a pulp like that, he described bluntly at Inosuke. He was beaten to a pulp by Inosuke. Why? Hanagaki could only ask within him. Say you're sorry, he demanded again. I'll pass, was what Inosuke responded with. Just say sorry. I'll pass. Just say you're sorry. Tanjiro and Hanagaki said in unison. But there was no response, and Zenitsu scoffed at that. If you're gonna be like that, we won't be eating with you anymore, he lightly threatens. Huh? Inosuke turned to the side to look at Zenitsu. What's up with that? Inosuke asked in questioning but mocking tone. Meals always taste better when you eat with someone you know, Zenitsu explains. He's right, you know. Tanjiro backs him. Hanagaki hums in agreement. Did you guys hit your head or something? Inosuke asks with a deadpan look, and his knot is in full view. Who are you to talk? Says you. Zenitsu and Hanagaki spoke in reprimanding tone as they lean up to speak to Inosuke. Is there anything I can help you with? Was a soft-spoken voice of the old woman before, asking from beside one of the shoji walls above their heads, which made them all tense up at that. Monster. Hey! The third or fourth time Hanagaki and Tanjiro yelled back in unison at Zenitsu's remark.